when the young master practiced shooting for the first time. He accidentally injured the young duke, even though he had already apologized sincerely, and the young duke didn't seem to blame him. He was still scolded by the nobles and slapped to the ground by his mother, just because he had inadvertently made contacts with the nobles, which threatened his brother's position. No matter how he tried to explain, he couldn't gain his mother's understanding. The meaning of his existence was just to be his brother's replica. 8 years ago, on a stormy night, a carriage suddenly appeared in the slums. A beautiful noble lady stepped out. She was Anastasia, the wife of Marquis Bale. She gestured for the man to lead the way, and the man flatteringly said, "I spent a lot of effort searching for her. What do you want with that child?" As soon as he said this, a sword was pressed against his throat. "If you want to live, just lead the way." The man was so frightened he didn't dare breathe, and had no choice but to obey. Soon they reached their destination. "She's over there." In the distance there was a little girl. At the sight of that beautiful golden hair, Anastasia knew this was the person she was looking for. The man carefully hinted at his payment. A money bag was thrown at his feet. He had never seen so much money in his life. Anastasia demanded that today's events must remain secret. He waved his hand and said, "Of course, I hope you have a pleasant time." Anastasia ordered the subordinate to ensure that the man would keep the secret. The subordinate bowed in response, "As you command." Beautiful Camellia, living in the slums, was a brilliant gem from the mud. Anastasia slowly walked up to Camellia. "It's raining so heavily, why aren't you going inside?" Camellia slowly raised her head and replied, "My mom is working. Who are you?" Hearing the word working, Anastasia smiled contemptuously. "Your name is Camellia, right? You know me?" "I do. Very well, in fact." Once upon a time, a very beautiful woman dragging her pregnant body hid in the slum area, Louvre, seeking refuge. With no one to rely on, she could only go from street to street begging. She was always on edge, as if hiding from someone, until one day she gave birth to a child, who was completely out of place in the foul-smelling Louvre. That little angel had emerald-like eyes. The season of abundance passed, followed by a cold winter. The child fell ill due to the severe cold, but the woman had no money. To save her child, she could only fling herself away the village doctor. 12 years later today, Anastasia came here. "I came here specifically because I heard your mother is very ill." Camellia anxiously grabbed Anastasia's skirt and asked, "Is my mother very ill? What should I do?" She turned her head, about to go find her mother. At that moment, a hand suddenly appeared behind her and knocked her unconscious. The guard steadily caught her as she fell, and couldn't help but remark, "For a 12-year-old child, she is too light." Anastasia gave him a sharp look. She didn't want to cause a commotion and ordered him to handle it properly. "What about the child's mother?" the guard hesitantly asked. Hearing this, Anastasia became angry. "Isn't it common for these shabby slums to catch fire?" The guard felt a chill run down his spine. "Just kidding. I just hope she doesn't remain safe and sound. Let's go." And so little Camellia was forced to leave her mother. Half dreaming, half awake, she only felt it was so fragrant and soft. Could this be heaven? Suddenly, she heard someone calling her, which made her wake from her dream. She was startled and immediately sat up. Turning her head, she saw a beautiful young lady looking at her anxiously. "Are you all right?" Everything around her seemed unfamiliar, unlike the slums. This place was large and bright and magnificently decorated. "Excuse me, is this heaven?" Betty was amused by her childish words. "You must be hungry? Let's eat something first. Here, it's a bit hot. Eat slowly." Looking at the abundant food before her, her stomach growled with hunger. This reminded her of her mother. She remembered a particularly beautiful lady saying her mother was sick. "Why aren't you eating? Aren't you hungry? Where is this place? Where is my mother? Where is that beautiful lady I met before?" Betty comforted her, saying that after she finished the porridge and bathed, that beautiful lady would come to see her. Unaware of how dirty she was, Camellia asked why she should bath. Betty stammered and couldn't say a complete sentence. Just then, the sound of hurried footsteps came from outside the door. Someone suddenly ran in. "Betty, didn't I tell you to inform me immediately when Camellia wakes up?" Camellia stared blankly at the boy before her, couldn't help but marvel. He looks like an angel. "Hello, Camellia. I'm Kieran Bale. You're 12, right?" Camellia timidly nodded. "I'm 15, 3 years older than you. I'm your brother." Looking at the enthusiastic boy before her, Camellia curled up. "Can you send me back to my mother? I didn't tell my mother when I came. She must be very worried." Seeing her like this, he suddenly realized she was missing her mother. "Betty, where is her mother?" Camellia also looked tearfully at Betty. Betty looked embarrassed and said, "Madam will tell you she only instructed me to take care of Camellia." Camellia remembered she needed to bathe. She looked down at her dirty self, in stark contrast to her shining brother. With a blushing face, she asked if she could take a bath. Betty put her arm around her and said, "Of course, let's go now. Bath first and then eat." As she said this, she excitedly pulled Camellia, intending to go for a bath. Suddenly, a violent coughing sound came from behind. It was Kieran, and Betty hurried over to him. Kieran coughed more and more severely, spitting out large amounts of blood. Camellia was scared and clutched at her clothes. Betty's cries for help brought a large number of servants. "Inform Anfar now. A cloth, fetch. A cloth." Before leaving, Kieran looked deeply at Camellia, as if telling her not to be afraid. Soon he was carried away by the servants. Watching Betty's anxious figure, Camellia asked if he would die. Hearing this, Betty was shocked. She turned around to see Camellia tightly gripping the edge of her skirt, sobbing, obviously frightened. Betty gently comforted her. "No, he won't. Really, let's go take a bath. If we're any later, it will affect our sleep." Camellia tightly held her big hand, as if only this could give her strength. She looked back. The scarlet stain scattered on the bedsheet was particularly eye-catching. After washing up, Camellia was brought to the Marquisess's room, facing Anastasia's scrutiny. Camellia was very cautious. She respectfully curtsied and greeted. Seeing her arrival, Anastasia only said that Camellia looked much better after being cleaned up. Camellia thanked her for the sumptuous food she provided. But she only wanted to see her mother now. As soon as she said this, Anastasia instantly emanated a cold aura, which made Camellia tremble with fear. Sensing her fear, Anastasia smiled and gestured for her to come over, although she was very afraid. For the sake of seeing her mother, she still forced herself to go. Camellia, I'm sorry, but you can't see your mother again. Hearing this, Camelia's pupils constricted. Then she heard, your mother has committed a serious crime. She stole something very valuable. Camellia found it hard to believe what she said. Thinking that she could not see her mother again, she fell into despair. Your mother stole something very precious to me, but I can't find it back now. So she should be punished, don't you agree? Looking at the increasingly frantic lady, Camellia mustered her courage and grabbed her skirt. I will find it for you. Perhaps you just lost it. My mother is not a thief. Anastasia no longer hesitated. She signaled Betty to present the item. An exquisite gift box appeared before Camellia. Inside was a pair of scissors. Camellia stared wide-eyed as she watched her pick up the scissors. What Anastasia said next would change her entire life. Camelia's Bale. From now on, you can only live as Camelia's Bale. In that case, your mother and you will be safe. But I am Camellia. No, from today onwards, you are Camelia's Bale. Short hair suits you too, Camelia's. Thus, in her extreme shock, her beautiful golden hair was all cut off. Unable to accept it for a moment, Camellia curled up and cried helplessly. Betty calmly comforted her. Your mother hasn't been punished. She's just receiving treatment. Madam isn't a bad person. As long as you obey, you can save Laura. Hearing her mother's name, Camellia suddenly opened her eyes. You know my mother? Betty smiled and answered yes. And this is also your father's home. This was the first time she had heard about her father from someone else. She followed Betty's gaze. On the wall hung a huge portrait, looking at the man with the same hair color as hers, and the same eye color. She remembered what her mother had told her. Your father also has beautiful light golden hair and emerald eyes. You look exactly like your father. Looking out the window, Camellia wanted to ask her mother what was going on. However, from then on, she lived in the mansion as a boy. In fact, she was the illegitimate daughter of the Bale family. Her half-brother Kieran was seriously ill, not knowing when he might suddenly pass away. But the Bale family couldn't be without an heir. Therefore, she had to live as Camelia's Bale before Kieran was completely cured. Only then could she see her mother. If the family had no heir, it would be looked down upon by other nobles. Because of this, Camellia, being a girl, was raised as a boy. Even if something happened to Kieran, the Bale family would still have a successor. Seeing Camellia passing, the maids all discussed. Camellia and Kieran looked so alike, but Camellia looked more beautiful. The moment she saw her father's portrait last night, Camellia had guessed. Perhaps what her mother stole wasn't an object. She felt everything here was complicated for her. She wasn't sure if obediently following orders would really make Madame send her back to her mother. This place was filled with flowers and luxurious decorations. Everything was incomparable to Louvre. A sudden gunshot startled her. What happened? She looked towards the direction of the sound and saw a young man slowly lowering his gun. Clearly, he was satisfied with his performance. Sensing her gaze, he suddenly turned around, and their eyes met. At this moment, Kieran appeared from nowhere. Camellia respectfully bowed to him. What greeted her was a big hug. Seeing Camellia being hugged by him until she couldn't breathe, he finally let go and enthusiastically introduced his brother to Claude. Hearing the word brother, Camellia violently pushed him away. Claude had somehow already come before them. Camellia paused, raised her head and met his gaze. Claude carefully examined the boy before him, lightly snorted and turned away. As she was wondering what this meant, Claude picked up the gun again and pointed to his ear, indicating for her to cover hers. But Camellia didn't understand. Claude had to speak up and tell her to cover her ears. Although she didn't know why, she still obediently did as told. Only then did Claude show a satisfied smile. Remembering the huge noise just now, she fearfully covered her ears tightly. His series of actions flowed smoothly. Boom, boom, boom. Birds in the forest scattered and flew away. Faint lavender fragrance and strong gunpowder smell were her first impression of Claude. Back indoors, Claude asked Kieran if he didn't find it unpleasant to have a brother. Kieran asked why Claude felt he would be unpleasant. Because that's evidence of deception. Kieran placed the gun on the table and calmly spoke. Deception must be paid for. My brother Camelius has already paid a high price for deception. The two men, at daggers drawn, both refused to back down. I'm happy anyway. I got another brother, Claude, don't worry. Although they looked similar in appearance, in other aspects, they were not alike at all. Looking at the seriously practicing Camellia, Claude smiled and thought that child interesting. Camellia was actually anxious every day. Kieran also noticed she had lost a lot of weight recently. Anastasia sarcastically commented that her studies were not as good as Kieran's. Kieran retorted, he's only been in class for less than a week. It's already good to have such results. He felt his mother shouldn't put too much pressure on Camellia. Seeing him always favoring an outsider, Anastasia became extremely angry. She planned to talk to Camellia when Kieran wasn't around. Camellia hung her head the whole time, not daring to speak. Only after Anastasia left did she slowly raise her head. Seeing her angel-like brother, she finally smiled. Kieran told her about his meeting with Claude. Claude was the young master of the Heir family in the north. They were the same age. Camelia only felt that Claude was handsome but scary. Kieran enthusiastically invited her to go hunting next time, but she refused because she had never handled a gun before. It doesn't matter, everyone has a first time. At this moment, a commotion came from outside. "My lord, the Marquis has returned." Hearing father had returned, Kieran excitedly sprang up from his chair. By the time they ran out, the servants had already lined up to welcome the Marquis. Kieran had always been the Marquis's beloved son. Camelia stood far away. She only felt a stranger toward her father before her. The Marquis also noticed her. She was scared and quickly lowered her head. Feeling father getting closer to her, her heart was filled with unease. The Marquis crouched down before her, calling her name. She timidly looked up and saw him opening his arms and calling her over. She first froze, then stepped nervously towards him. The next second, she fell into a warm embrace. As father gently rubbed her head, a strange emotion surged into her heart. Tears began to well up in her eyes. "Welcome back, Camillus." The Marquis, who returned to his room, questioned Anastasia why the Camelia he met was dressed as a boy. He clearly heard she was a girl. Hearing his question, Anastasia replied, "We don't need a daughter, she just needs to hold on until Kieran recovers. For the sake of the family, I just hope she can temporarily be a substitute. For the sake of the family's interests, you are truly cruel. The truly cruel one is you. It is you that have feelings for a maid." Originally, she thought he was just playing around, and believed he would soon come to his senses. But just when Kieran was learning to walk, Laura was pregnant. The servants began to watch her attitude because she might be carrying a boy. The day Kieran had his accident, she felt like the sky was falling. She was convinced the culprit was Laura. Because Laura was pregnant, she could only drive her away. But Anastasia would never forgive her, and from that day on, Kieran was step by step moving towards death. The Marquis now only wanted to know how Laura was. But how could Anastasia possibly tell him? She wished Laura would die quickly. Seeing this, he bent down to soothe her emotions. He swore by the family's honor that he would never forgive Laura till death. A few days later, it was the day of the tea party. Snowflakes suddenly began to fall from the sky. Compared to the children's excitement, the adults all wore indifferent expressions. At this moment, Princess Rosina excitedly asked Marilyn if she wanted to go out and play. Marilyn declined her invitation on the grounds that it was too cold outside. Rosina guessed her little secret. "You're afraid your childish self will be seen by your Lord Claude, right?" Seeing her thoughts exposed by Rosina, she immediately became angry with embarrassment. The noisy sound outside attracted Rosina's attention. It was Claude and Kieran making a dazzling entrance. Rosina excitedly pressed against the glass window. The stubborn Marilyn also came closer. Her gaze quickly locked onto Claude, but he was looking in another direction. She followed his line of sight and found a thinly dressed little boy looking up at the sky. Everyone was curious about what he was doing. Was he tasting the snow? The noble ladies began to discuss. Anastasia felt Camelia was embarrassing them and ordered the maid to take her back to her room immediately. But Rosina became interested in Camelia and asked Anastasia how old Camelia was. Faced with her inquiry, Anastasia greeted her with a smile. "Rosina, he is 12 years old, 3 years younger than Kieran." Marilyn now especially regretted refusing the invitation to go out and play. Although Camelia and Kieran looked very alike, the keen Rosina still became suspicious. "Is that child really a boy?" Hearing this, Anastasia tightened her heart. Then Rosina continued, "He's too beautiful. Even if someone said he was a girl, I would believe it." Having lived for so many years, Anastasia had seen all sorts of situations. She said with a smile, "Many people have said so, Princess Rosina." Not hearing the answer she wanted, Rosina coldly snorted and turned her head away, no longer looking at her. She looked at Kieran, feeling he was really gentle. Seeing Claude also leading Camelia, Marilyn felt extremely jealous. Why is he a boy yet so beautiful? After the royal tea party, Claude went to the shooting range alone. He was keeping an appointment. From afar, he could hear the noisy Bale brothers. The moment she saw Claude, Camelia felt nervous. She didn't know her teacher today was him. At this moment, she just wanted to cry. But Claude didn't seem to mind. He picked up the gun and practiced by himself. Then he asked Camelia why she wanted to taste the snow, perhaps not expecting her intention to be discovered. She instantly blushed, answering she was just curious. Curious? The taste of snow? Isn't that something only vagrants would do? As he spoke, he handed the gun to her. While Camelia was still hesitating, Claude had already come behind her. "So what does snow taste like? Answer me, Camillus." They were so close that she felt her heart was about to jump to her throat. Nervous and afraid, her hands began to tremble uncontrollably. In the midst of panic, the gun accidentally went off fire. Her pupils constricted and her mind went blank. The birds flying away in the distance. She discovered Claude's hand that didn't retreat in time got burned. Seeing Claude injured, everyone was scared and shouted loudly, "Get a doctor!" But Claude calmly said, "Enough." The attendant immediately turned pale. "It's just a small burn. Nothing to fuss over." At this moment, a faint sobbing sound came from behind. He turned around to see Camelia crying like a tearful person. He laughed lightly. "I'm the one who's injured. Why are you crying?" But Camelia didn't answer him. Instead, she knelt down in the snow by herself, anxiously piled up a snowball, her hands frozen red without her realizing. Claude felt confused. The next second, his injured hand was grabbed back by Camellia. She placed that snowball on the wound. Whether from cold or fear, Camelia's whole body was trembling, thinking about the punishment she would receive for injuring such a noble person. She was scared and closed her eyes for a long time before finally opening her mouth. "Please forgive me, it's all my fault." At this time, Marilyn and others arrived upon hearing the commotion. She anxiously pushed Camellia aside, took out the handkerchief she carried, and held Claude's injured hand. Noticing Princess Rosina also chase after them, Kieran politely greeted her. Claude didn't like Marilyn, so he immediately withdrew his hand. Marilyn turned and glared angrily at the troublemaker, shouting loudly, "You imbecile, handling something as dangerous as a gun. How could you be so careless?" Camellia was scared and kept backing away. Suddenly, a large hand rested on her shoulder. "Young lady, are you now shouting at my brother?" But he injured Lord Claude. Marilyn spoke while her body began to tremble. Kieran, with a gloomy face, said word by word, "So I'm asking you, are you shouting at my brother?" Marilyn was immediately scared and admitted it was her mistake, quickly apologizing to him. But Kieran held Camellia tightly. "The person you should apologize to is not me but my brother." Then he spoke in a gentle tone. Camelius apologized to Lord Claude. She nodded hard, and respectfully bowed to Claude, apologizing, "I'm sorry, Lord Claude." Her sincere attitude made Kieran feel extremely gratified, but Marilyn was still resentful. At this moment, a crisp laugh rang out. Feeling Claude getting closer to her, Camellia suddenly raised her head, only to see him extending his injured hand again and saying, "Do it again." She didn't understand what he meant. "Like you did just now. Do it again, Camellia. That's much better than a handkerchief." Knowing she had hurt Claude, Anastasia slapped her to the ground after her return home, just because she had inadvertently mingled with the nobles, thus threatening Kieran's position. No matter how Camellia tried to explain, she couldn't gain her understanding. Camellia found it hard to believe that Madame would say such malicious words. "You have a lot of nerve crying. Remember, all you need to do is staying alive like a shadow. If you dare to steal the limelight again, I will definitely not let you off." These words were heard by Claude outside the door. He just found it absurd. He, as the victim, didn't pursue the matter. What was this so-called mother getting excited about? Outside, snow was falling heavily. Faint sobbing could be heard. It was Camellia who was punished by Anastasia and not allowed to enter the house. At this moment, she really missed her mother. Suddenly, a shadow enveloped her. Realizing someone had come, she abruptly raised her head. It was the injured Claude. He crouched down in front of Camellia. Imitating her afternoon posture, he piled up a snowball and put it on her slapped, swollen face. His sudden action made her feel flattered. Their heartbeats had already begun to quicken. "So this is how it feels?" After saying this, he stood up, patting the snow from his hands, and turned around to leave on his own. The huge garden instantly had only Camellia left, as if Claude had never been there. Learning of this matter, the Marquise had an argument with Anastasia. "Camellia is also our child. Slapping her face is really too much." But Anastasia claimed that she punished Camellia for the sake of the Bale family. "If she doesn't make mistakes, I definitely wouldn't hit her. If it were Kieran who disgraced the Bale family, I would treat him equally. The family would decline because of a child's mistake," which was the most ridiculous joke the Marquis had ever heard. Who is really disgracing the Bale family? He dropped these words and slammed the door as he left. Then he found his subordinate to inform him that diamond mines had been discovered in the neutral area of the north. If the emperor doesn't intervene, the mines would all belong to Duke Heir, and the king of Gyur had already made moves, even if just to stop their conspiracy. The Bale family must support Duke Heir to strengthen their power. Just at this moment, an attendant suddenly came to report. "My lord, Lord Kieran is having difficulty breathing." By the time the Marquis arrived, Kieran had already lost consciousness. Even though they had used the best medicine in the empire, it had no effect at all, which was equivalent to Kieran being directly sentenced to death, just as they lost hope. Claude appeared and proposed taking Kieran beyond the neutral territory to Gyur, because there was a physician whose name was Schmidt, and he was called the healer of all healers. But according to what the Marquise knew, Schmidt was the royal physician to House Sergio. What he didn't know was that Schmidt had received favors from Duke Heir. Moreover, Claude was unwilling to lose his dear friend this way. Hearing there was hope for survival, Anastasia grasped at this lifeline. As long as Kieran can be saved, she was willing to do anything. Claude told them to think it over carefully. As soon as he went outside, he saw Camellia standing alone on the wall. She wasn't even allowed to see her brother without permission. When Claude asked how old she was, she timidly replied, 12 years old. "Have you gone to the academy?" "I study with Master Theodore." "Well, then we'll meet when you reach the higher grades." Camellia stared blankly at his departing figure. 4 years later, on a bright, sunny morning, Camelia's hair had grown longer. Her greatest pleasure was swimming. "But that worried Betty greatly, my lord. It is too dangerous." Camellia answered with a smile. "The sunshine is so nice. How can I not swim?" Betty warned her to be cautioned because Anastasia was about to return. When they was back, Camellia was always troubled by the maids always swooning over her because of her outstanding appearance. She just wanted to be unnoticed. Even such a small request couldn't be fulfilled. At that moment, she thought of Kieran, who went to study in Gyur and had become a hostage. But he had no choice in order to receive treatment. In these 4 years, she hadn't received any news about him. Only if Kieran returned healthy could she return to her real home. At that moment, a servant came to report. "My lord, there are some guests from the academy who wish to see you." They had come regarding her enrollment. Due to her disguise as a boy, the family had repeatedly delayed her enrollment. Upon learning she would study in the capital, she could no longer sit still and said to her father, "Father, I want to go." She promised not to bring shame to House Bale, and successfully obtained approval. "Then I'll arrange a residence for you near the academy." Camelia's eyes immediately lit up. Since everything had been arranged, the academy teachers prepared to leave. But an inconspicuous man in the crowd muttered Camelia's name over and over again. Actually, the reason that Camelia insisted on going to the capital was simple. Louvre was located in the capital. That's where her mother was. She didn't want to give up this opportunity. Just as she was dreaming about the future, someone called out to her. This man she had just seen was her future supervisor teacher, whose name was Eddie. He stared at her with ill intent. Camelia felt uncomfortable under his gaze. Too beautiful an appearance easily attracts trouble. Not just humans, all living beings are like this. As he spoke, his hand kneaded her shoulder. He continued, "Wherever you go, some people will inevitably dislike you. Especially privileged young noblemen like you must be careful." Because she was a girl, the Marquise wouldn't let her go to the capital alone. He found the maid Pippi to accompany her. Camelia knew Pippi had wanted her to wear formal dresses for a long time, and told her that she would try when they arrived in the capital. The reason was simple. She was afraid her mother wouldn't recognize her in boy's attire. The capital was both prosperous and bustling. It was completely different from what she remembered. She had never left the Louvre before, because her mother said the outside world was dangerous. Soon they arrived at their destination. Before enrollment, she needed to have her uniform tailored. Suddenly, a voice came from behind them. "I'll guide Camillus." It was Prince Wade. "Long time no see, Marquis Bale," and Camillus Bale. Then he used the Emperor as an excuse to send the Marquise away, and personally took Camelia to get her uniform made, his entering without knocking displeased the shop owner, Frank. After all, there were other customers present, but Wade claimed he was just guiding a lost customer. "Look who's here, Claude. You haven't changed at all." "Hello, Camillus." So the previous customer was Claude. When it was Camelia's turn to be measured, Claude showed no signs of leaving. At this point, Frank asked her to take off her shirt, because the shirt she was wearing was too large. The academy uniform should be impeccable and elegant. Such loose clothing was clearly not suitable for her. She feared that at this rate her disguise would eventually be discovered, so she asked Frank, "Do you have a screen?" Since it was a shop that her father had recommended, Camelia felt completely at ease, but Claude was puzzled by her request for a screen. Although it was embarrassing, she still took off her shirt. Frank was shocked on the spot. This was clearly a young girl. Luckily, he was experienced and didn't expose her identity. Instead, he made her a suitable shirt. Compared to the obvious attempt to hide by wearing loose shirts, a well-fitted shirt worn confidently was less likely to arouse suspicion. Wade was seeing Frank take such care with a customer for the first time. He couldn't help teasing about it, and invited Camelia to visit his palace. So that's how the current situation came about. Camelia was forced to share one with Claude because she couldn't ride a horse. Such intimate behavior made her very shy. Seeing this, Claude leaned close and said, "You should smile, Camelia. Don't make it look like I'm kidnapping you." Her face turned redder, and she couldn't help but wonder why the road to the palace was so long. At the palace, Camelia was too nervous to know what to say. "The palace is magnificent. You're both my brother's friends. I am very glad to come here." But Claude sarcastically said she was good at flattery, which prompted her displeasure. Wade came running to comfort her, but was blocked by Claude. "Your Highness, please control yourself. You teased Count Sheringham's son the same way last time, and you suffered great humiliation because of it. So there's no need to be the subject of gossip again. Moreover, Camillus is so good-looking. He will surely be surrounded by scandals." Wade seemed unconcerned, while Camelia silently fuming at them. Wade was still complaining about Claude's nasty temper. At this point, Camelia suddenly explained, "I'm not flattering others, but considering their feelings. Lord Claude, I'm not trying to gain any benefit by flattering others." After saying this, she brushed past Claude and ran away. This series of actions greatly aroused his interest. Then they arrived at the garden, looking at the delicate desserts. Her stomach growled loudly. Claude, seeing her hungry, told her to eat directly. Camelia stubbornly said she stared at the dishes, because they look beautiful. But Wade saw through her. "You must be famished after riding all the way here from Corsair." They stared at her teasingly, making Camelia feel stressed. Seeing her still insisting she wasn't hungry, Wade put a sandwich on her plate. After much hesitation, she took a small bite and chewed slowly. The next second her eyes lit up. How can something be so delicious? Suddenly, Wade mentioned that Rosina seemed to be engaged to Kieran. Hearing this news, Camelia was very shocked. Obviously, she knew nothing about it. She thought perhaps it was normal not to tell her anything because she wouldn't be invited anyway. Seeing her sadness, Claude pushed his own sandwich towards her. Noticing his gesture, Camelia wondered if he was trying to make her feel better. Then she heard him say, "Lady Bale has always stayed in the north. It's normal that you didn't receive news." Just as she was touched by his consideration, he continued sarcastically, "Looking at you makes me ravenous, so eat quickly." Hearing his words, Camelia felt her previous emotions were wasted. What's going on in his head? I see. If it takes this body of mine to sate your hunger, then so be it. With that, she stuffed the sandwich into her mouth. Only then did Claude show a satisfied smile, seeing she had eaten like a messy kitten. He He wanted to wipe her face, but suddenly changed his mind and held her chin. I look forward to the day we become closer. It will be an absolute pleasure. As dusk fell, Camellia was the first to leave. Her deliberately aristocratic posture and her flustered reactions when teased all seemed so adorable to Claude. Wait, I actually find a man adorable. I must be going crazy. Seeing his unpleasant expression, Wade was quite displeased and teased, "It seems you've become quite the liar, Claude. I also like all beautiful things. The reason I like you and Kieran is the same, so don't be too hard on Camillus. Perhaps, as you said, he may be a stand-in for Kieran, but in the end, he will be mine." Seeing Claude hadn't spoken for a long time, Wade rose to leave because the banquet was about to begin. This banquet was mainly to find a crown princess for Wade, and Claude recommended Marquise Selby's daughter. Wade asked in shock, "Isn't Marilyn your fiancé? Who doesn't know you're going to be engaged to Miss Selby?" Mentioning this, Claude was troubled because he didn't like Marilyn at all. Meanwhile, Camellia had been feeling unwell since returning from the palace. After examination, the doctor discovered she had indigestion from overeating. Seeing she was unwell, the Marquis didn't force her to attend the banquet. Camellia immediately felt relieved, because she really didn't like such occasions. After her father left, she could finally rest well, taking off the troublesome chest binder. She felt like she had been reborn. At this moment, all she wanted was to get some fresh air. So she opened the window. Enjoying the evening breeze and eating candy, she felt quite content, and thought her mother might be somewhere on the other side of the wall. Just as she was worrying about whether her mother would recognize her, a woman's voice came from below. She looked towards the sound and saw Claude with a beautiful woman she had seen before. It was Marilyn, Marquise Selby's daughter. Hearing Marilyn ask if they should also get engaged, Claude looked very reluctant. "The Empire has many good men, and many men admire you, miss, but no one can compare to you." Dropping these words, Marilyn turned and ran away. At this moment, Camellia just wanted to find a hole to crawl into, because she seemed to have seen something she shouldn't have. Just as she was quietly trying to close the window, the candies in her arms spilled out. Camellia was so scared her eyes widened. When Claude had just heard someone call him to be careful, he saw candy raining from the sky, and the familiar figure not far away. The next second, he came into intimate contact with the falling candy. Looking at the culprit, his face darkened. "So there you are." But all he got in response was the bang of the closing window, instantly falling back into silence. This guy. In the room, Camellia was worried whether Claude would bother her. Seeing her underwear on the floor, she froze, thinking that Claude must not find it. Just then, a series of urgent knocks sounded at the door. Before she could react, Claude had already burst in. "You threw candy all over my face and then you hide in your room?" But Camellia was completely preoccupied, because she was tightly clutching her chest binder. Now the most important thing was how to deal with it. She casually threw it on the floor. "Your stomach is uncomfortable, but you can still eat candy? The medicine is too bitter, so I just ate a few." As she spoke, she kicked the binder far away. Seeing her panic, Claude calmly patted the sofa. "Camillus, come here." Hearing this, she was too nervous to answer, wondering if her disguise had been exposed. Claude continued, "I need to confirm something, so come here." Seeing her clutching her collar tightly, with no intention of coming over, Claude darkened his face. "Are you completely treating me as a villain?" Actually, Camellia was just feeling insecure without her chest binder. Then she heard his warning, "You should be careful of Prince Wade. He likes beautiful and dazzling things, regardless of gender or status. Don't casually smile in front of him. Keep an appropriate distance, because your voice sounds nice." The sudden compliment made her blush. She coughed lightly, trying to ease the awkwardness. Suddenly she noticed his slender figure, well-defined eyebrows, a straight prominent nose bridge, and a razor-sharp lip line, which carried himself with an air of quiet distinction. "If Prince Wade likes things of beauty, Lord Claude, shouldn't you also be careful? I think you're more beautiful than anyone." After saying this, she turned and ran into the bathroom. She didn't know why she had said such embarrassing words. At this moment, she felt her heart was about to jump into her throat. The next second came a burst of laughter. It was Claude. "You've made me your little plaything, haven't you?" The response to him was the loud sound of the door closing. Looking at the shirt she had thrown on the floor, he inexplicably picked it up, smelling the faint lavender fragrance. He couldn't help but smile. At this time, the sound of running water came from the bathroom. He thought Camellia really had no sense of safety. After Camellia finished her bath, she looked around to find where Claude was, but heard some sounds. It was Claude and a group of maids. When he was leaving, Camellia chased after him and smiled brightly, wishing him have a pleasant night, which displeased him, because only when they were parting would she show him such a smile. Thinking of how she looked just after her bath, he suddenly felt that this evening was quite pleasant after all. On the other side, because his mother had withheld the letters, Kieran, who missed Camellia desperately, had no choice but to find a reliable helper, Ian Sergio, the third prince of the Kingdom of Gayor. Over the 4 years, they had become close friends who told each other everything. Kieran handed him the envelope and asked him to help mail it to his sister Camellia. Ian had long wanted to meet Camellia, his good friend praised so highly. "All right, I'll deliver it to Corsair. To be precise, I'll deliver it to your sister Camellia." Kieran was shocked by his arbitrary decision. By the time he reacted, Ian had already left. Under his utterly shocked gaze, Ian jumped out the window, taking the letter and running away. At this moment came Anastasia's voice, towards Mother, who had caused the obstacle in communication between he and Camellia. He felt a lump in his throat. Anastasia was grateful that Ian could be so close to her son, but she didn't want Kieran to get too close to him for political reasons, although Kieran always complied with her wishes. In her view, he was moving further and further away from her. To make it easier for her mother to recognize her, Camellia wanted to have a dress like girls wear, but because of several recent crimes targeting noble women in the capital, although Camellia looked like a boy, at first glance she might still be mistaken for a lady, so Betty didn't allow them to go out. But this was no problem for Camellia. She easily made up an excuse that successfully persuaded Betty. Well, then, I'll prepare the carriage. You must be careful. When she looked up, the two had already disappeared. Soon they were freely roaming the streets. Meanwhile, soldiers were standing guard outside the Selby house, because Marilyn had been attacked by criminals last night, and was lying unconscious in bed now. Wade said he would personally lead the guards to arrest the criminal and comforted the Marchioness. We will certainly punish them severely. Please don't worry. The one leading the troops was Lord Claude, and the criminal's identity had already been identified as a revolutionary dissatisfied with the class system. After explanation, Claude left first, leaving Wade alone. The crowd on the street was bustling. Claude happened to pass by a candy store. Thinking of the candy Camellia had spilled, he couldn't help but smile. It's just a bit of candy. Why did she make such a face? At this time, Pippi was walking well but found Camellia had stopped in her tracks. Camellia explained she saw someone familiar, but this didn't affect their passion for shopping. What Camellia wanted to buy most was still clothes. She gazed at the women's dresses in the window, asking Pippi if Betty would be happy if she bought this for her. Suddenly, passing noble ladies caught her attention. Originally, she could have been like them, wearing beautiful dresses and shopping with friends, but she probably would never be able to realize that in this lifetime. Just as she was feeling dejected, someone called out to her from behind, and her pupils contracted in shock. Because he was clearly calling her Camellia, but apart from a few close people, no one knew her true identity. She had never seen the strange man before. After much hesitation, she stammered that he had the wrong person, but he insisted it wasn't possible. She was definitely Kieran's sister. Only then did Camellia remember to ask who he was, but he kept teasing her. I'm a friend who's come to drink a cup of fruit sherbet. So they went to a beverage shop. Compared to Camelia's restraint, Ian was excited, but he was about to be driven crazy by the heat, suggesting they sit on the terrace, but was firmly rejected by Camellia, because his flamboyant foreign attire was too eye-catching. But in his view, her disguise as a boy was more conspicuous. Camellia angrily insisted she was a boy, that her brother was just joking with him. But for Ian, who knew the truth, it hardly mattered. Calming down, Camellia asked Ian if her brother was well. Resting his head on his hand, he replied, "Of course. Kieran has been waiting for news from you, but never received your replies. Actually, he also knows that all the letters were intercepted by Lady Bale. But he misses you so much. That's why he asked me to send you the letter. You need to eat quickly so I can go back, Camellia." She was very displeased with him constantly calling her real name, and raised her hand to refuse his feeding. But Ian became more enthusiastic, calling her Camellia over and over. Soon, Kieran will return to Corsair. Then you can reply to him yourself. Then he handed the letter to Camellia. Looking at the letter, she became uneasy, wondering what would happen to her if her brother returned healthy. Could she really go back to being Camellia? Seeing her fall silent, Ian grinned, thinking she was adorable. Then he invited her to the kingdom of Heir. "I'll send an invitation when I get back. You must come. I look forward to seeing you in dress." After saying that, he gently took her hand and performed a standard kiss on the hand. Back home, Camellia looked at the letter paper lost in thought, contemplating how to reply. Suddenly, a stack of exquisite pastries appeared before her. It was Betty. She had come because Camellia had sent Pippi 5 sets of dresses. "I also heard you had ice cream with a foreigner. You should be more careful when going out alone without my company. Don't you know what happened to Miss Marilyn? You'll be living in the capital, and at that time I won't be by your side. What if something happens to you?" Seeing she was genuinely concerned, Camellia gently reassured her. "I gave Pippi dresses to thank her for accompanying me to the capital." Each time, the first to be defeated was Betty. She really couldn't win against Camellia. At this point, Camellia suddenly became curious about how the madam found her 4 years ago. Betty's hand pouring tea obviously paused. "My lord, why do you suddenly ask this?" Then she hesitantly explained. "A servant encountered Laura, but she has now been married off." Upon hearing this, Camellia showed unmistakable disappointment. Sometimes she was confused. Why did it have to be her? Betty continued explaining that at that time, Kieran was in danger. Anastasia also led a difficult life. People around were pointing fingers at the dying Kieran. Everyone was discussing the heir issue. Relatives also pressured Madame to adopt one of their sons. But once there was an adopted son, even if Kieran recovered, those predatory relatives wouldn't leave him alone. So she found Camellia, only because she could be discarded at any time. Now that Kieran had recovered and would return soon, then she can go back to her original life. So she decided to tell Betty her true thoughts, that she wanted to find her mother. and rushed out of the room, ignoring Betty's persuasion. Taking off her shoes and arranging them neatly, she dove into the water. The truth was so cruel for her. She didn't want to think about it anymore. Only immersed in water could she find a moment of peace. She did want to escape from here, but it looked like there was something holding her back. At this time, a familiar male voice interrupted her thoughts. The moment she recognized the visitor, her pupils suddenly contracted. Why would Lord Claude be here? Claude looked at her with a half smile. Camillus, is swimming your hobby? As he spoke, he stood up and began taking off his clothes. She looked questioningly at Betty. Betty shook her head, indicating she didn't know either. Claude explained he came to visit Kieran but got the day wrong. Just then, he saw Camelia swimming. I haven't swum for a long time. Let me join you. Camelia immediately covered her chest, afraid he would discover her true identity. Claude was confused by her behavior but didn't wait for her consent before diving into the water. The splashing water hit her cheeks. When she opened her eyes again, Claude had already come behind her. She suddenly felt at a loss. With a splash, she ducked underwater. She must escape immediately, but her hand was caught by Claude, who had pursued her. She turned back in confusion, only to see Claude giving her a handsome smile. She used all her strength to break free from his grip, accidentally opening her mouth in the panic. The severe discomfort forced her to surface. Seeing her coughing violently, Betty was very worried, but Claude mocked her poor diving skills. She immediately flared up. It's because you suddenly grabbed me. Then I'll give you another chance. Camelia wouldn't fall for it and turned to leave, leaving Claude alone in the water, bewildered. Betty anxiously draped a shawl over her. She looked back to see Claude had also come ashore, walking past her calmly, and sitting on the camping mat. Come over, at least you can sit and rest, right? After hesitation, she obediently did as told. It is very warm today. It's no need to wrap up so tightly. She pursed her lips, saying she was afraid of the cold. You strange fellow. Dropping these words, he lay down to sleep. Camelia was about to leave, but was called back by him. How about I don't sleep and play with you? Don't tease me, I'm not a child. To me, you are a child, and I'm 16 now. Yeah, he is already 16, and Kieran will soon return. At this point, Claude suddenly asked about her plans, because according to noble law, the second son couldn't inherit any property. If she waited until graduation to find work, it would be too late. Camelia said she would figure it out herself. At this time, she suddenly heard him say, how about being a butler for the Heir family? I'll take you in. She was full of questions. She always thought he disliked her, but she had things she wanted to do. Although she wasn't sure yet, it definitely wasn't being a butler. I don't know what you want to do, but the benefits certainly won't be so good. How much money I earn isn't important. What's important is that I can do what I want. As she spoke, her eyes were so determined. Claude didn't know how to respond. Now it was so quiet you could only hear the wind blowing through the leaves. So he lay back down. She thought he was really strange. He asked her but didn't listen to her speak. At this time, Claude turned to her again. I rode here on horseback and I'm a bit tired. I need to sleep for a while. How about lying down with me? His handsome smile made her blush, biting her lip without speaking. She would eventually have to forget this place, but unforgettable things happened here one after another. Seeing him frowning in his sleep, her hand paused as it rested on her chest, then gently stroked his head. Seeing his slightly upturned lips, she slowly moved her hand away, feeling somewhat melancholy. Though Claude was the one who suggested sleeping, Camelia had also fallen asleep. When she woke up again, she was lying in bed. By this time, it was already late. She asked Pippi what had happened and how she got here, hearing that she fell asleep outside and it was Claude that had carried her in. Her face immediately turned red. Fortunately, after bringing her back, Claude had gone to the capital. Otherwise, she really wouldn't know how to face him. While bathing, Camelia absent-mindedly worried about her weight. Hearing Pippi answer that she wasn't just not heavy but light as a feather, she couldn't be happy, thinking next time they met Claude would definitely ask how a man could be so light. In fact, Camelia now looked more like an elegant young lady. No one with eyes would see her as a man. Seeing her melancholic expression, Pippi couldn't help saying, I heard Lord Kieran has regained his health. How long do you plan to live like this? Hearing this, Camelia reprimanded Pippi for speaking out of turn. Actually, she knew what Pippi said was right. Even if she wanted to hide, she couldn't hide anymore. Prince Ian had said he looked forward to seeing her in dress. Claude also said looking at her made him feel hungry. Even if it was to find her mother and return to an ordinary life, she couldn't get entangled with those two men. Soon after, Kieran returned and immediately embraced her. Brother, you've changed so much. I hardly recognize you. You've grown up too, Camillus. She could hardly believe he was healthy. But his next words left her frozen in place. Camillus, you have become a lady. Anastasia also returned, but she looked at them coldly. When Camelia went to greet her, she walked away. Camillus, I have something to tell you. Come in with me. Camelia fearfully swallowed, feeling panicked and helpless, while Kieran beside her remained silent, tightly holding her hand. She looked up at him in shock. The setting sun's glow made Kieran appear especially tall. After entering the room, Anastasia directly asked, You and Kieran are still so close after being apart so long. Have you contacted each other privately? Camelia replied, No, this is our first meeting in 4 years. So you're going to the capital the day after tomorrow? Yes, thanks to your care. Master Theodore praised you endlessly. You've done well, Camillus. Now you're qualified to have Kieran call you brother. Camelia bit her lip, about to speak but hesitating. Then she heard Anastasia ask if she would look for her mother in the capital. Seeing she remained silent, Anastasia asked again. Camellia firmly answered that she wanted to find her birth mother this time. But Anastasia scoffed. But this is not a simple matter. You've been active in noble society as Camillus for 4 years. Many nobles know you. It's obviously unrealistic to want to return to your original self overnight. I warned you early on to live quietly like a shadow. Anastasia indicated that at this point there was still a way. Soon Camellia would go to the capital to study. At that time, if she could pretend to be ill as much as possible, then she could disappear under the pretext of recuperation. When she was gradually forgotten, they would hold a funeral for Camillus, then she could be Camellia again. Hearing about holding a funeral for a living person, Camellia became very emotional. Anastasia just smiled, saying she only wanted to keep the promise made when bringing her to the bail house. But her performance had far exceeded Anastasia's expectations. Since Kieran had fully recovered, Anastasia decided to give her freedom. Considering she had always tried hard, Anastasia allowed her to attend Kieran's engagement party, because Kieran also hoped Camellia could attend. Camellia clenched her hands and said to Anastasia, "If so, I also have a request. Please forgive my mother." Camellia had already compromised, but Anastasia had no intention of forgiving her mother. "Don't you think this request is unreasonable, Camillus? How dare you ask me to forgive her?" But she was interrupted halfway by Camellia. "If asking for your forgiveness is unreasonable, then what about these 4 years I've dressed as a boy for my brother?" What they didn't know was that Kieran had been quietly standing outside the door because he was worried about Camellia facing their mother alone. These words naturally reached his ears. "The reason I became Camillus was to seek your forgiveness for my mother, so please forgive her." She could no longer hold back tears of humiliation, but despite her crying, Anastasia showed no sign of yielding. At this moment, a pair of warm, large hands rested on her shoulders. "Mother, enough, strictly speaking. Camellia is also a member of the Bale family. You're arranging a funeral for a living person. Treating her like this is too much." But Anastasia had never viewed Camellia as family. She regarded Camellia as a substitute for Kieran. And now that Kieran had recovered, so Camellia was useless. Afterwards, the two had a fierce argument, but Camellia didn't want Kieran caught in the middle. She quietly turned to leave. Hearing Kieran calling loudly, "Camellia!" her hand on the door paused. "Brother, my name is Camillus." Then she left without looking back. She felt extremely wronged, not understanding why the El Madame would consider a funeral for a living person. After all, her 4 years living as Camillus weren't entirely fake. After going to the capital, she probably wouldn't return here, but her heart felt somewhat reluctant. At this time, a figure appeared behind her. "Pippi, don't come over. I want to be alone for a while. I see you are still not a lady today." This voice clearly wasn't Pippi, but that strange man. While she was thinking, Ian came to her side. "We meet again, Camellia. Why are you crying here?" At that moment, the Selby house was brightly lit. It was the day of the banquet celebrating Marilyn's recovery. All noble families had been invited. Even Princess Rosina had come at the invitation. The venue was filled with words of congratulations for Marilyn's recovery. But her gaze remained fixed on one person, Lord Claude, her secret crush whom she thought about day and night. She walked up and naturally took his arm, but was coldly rejected. "Since you're fine now, I'll take my leave." She carefully tried to make him stay, but the party hasn't even officially started. Claude explained he had arranged to meet with Kieran. Marilyn reluctantly wanted to keep him there, but all she received was his look of disgust. She didn't want to anger him, so she had no choice but to admit her mistake. So Claude bid farewell to Rosina and left. Wade, always well-informed, said, "I heard Lord Kieran is bringing a guest back. It seems to be the 3rd son of King Lewin. Rumor has it he's a warmonger. We shouldn't underestimate the barbarity of Heir people. That prince must be just like King Lewin, he'll get whatever he wants at all costs." Yet it was this prince that Kieran praised highly. Just as Wade was giving Kieran a pass as a good person, Claude, who had been silent all along, suddenly explained that Ian had protected Kieran in the kingdom of Heir. His attitude shocked Wade immensely. "Not you too, Claude. One should never consort with the enemy. Kieran is also a noble, he wouldn't act based on personal preferences. I hope you haven't forgotten that you are nobles of the Empire." Claude took a deep breath and continued, "But Ian is a prince of an enemy country. That's an undeniable fact. And now because of the excavation rights of diamond mines, conflicts have occurred in the neutral zone. If anything happens to Ian in the Empire, war will be inevitable." But the one they were talking about was following Camellia like a shadow. "I'm here as a guest, Camellia. Why do you keep running away?" "I'm so sad." Camellia angrily retorted that she wasn't Camellia but Camillus. Actually, she had just brought him back to the hall, where guests were supposed to stay. But he had thick-skinnedly said he came to see her and didn't want to tour the mansion. Suddenly, he leaned in close to her. "Ian, call me Ian." Camellia really wasn't good at dealing with this kind of person, so she obediently did as told and called his name. He immediately became as happy as a puppy. She used the excuse of having many things to do to try to get away from Ian, but she didn't expect him to offer to help her. Realizing she couldn't communicate with him at all, Camellia planned to find her brother, but she fell backward after stepping on some leaves, and was caught by Ian, who was behind her. Hearing him call her Camellia, she absent-mindedly responded. Seeing his smile, she realized she had said the wrong thing. She quickly pushed him away. At that moment, a familiar voice came from behind. Looking back, she saw Kieran staring at them with an unhappy face. Ian, I clearly told you to wait for me at the guest house, but you took advantage of my absence to flirt with my sister. Kieran stepped forward and protectively pulled Camellia behind him. Camellia also glared at Ian. They looked exactly the same when united against a common enemy. Seeing this, Ian quickly explained that he was a bit bored and had met Camellia after smelling a familiar fragrance. His perverted behavior made Kieran shudder involuntarily. What are you, an animal? Sinfing away like a dog. Then Kieran gently asked Camellia if Ian had harassed her. He's a prince of a country after all. They talked about him harassing people to his face. He also needed dignity. Contrary to the expected answer, Camellia not only didn't accuse him of harassment, but smiled brightly and said he had just drunk juice with her. Seeing her smile, Ian felt his heart melt. Since she had said so, Kieran couldn't pursue the matter further. On the other side, Wade and Claude had arrived. Wade, who had always been unfriendly toward the kingdom of Sergio, suggested that while Claude tried to win over Ian, he would go find Camellia. But his suggestion was refused by Claude. He trusted Wade being alone with Camellia. In fact, Claude always felt happy whenever he saw Camellia. She seemed interesting to him. Seeing his expression, his curiosity was on fire. A few days ago, Claude had suggested Camellia come to the Heir house as a housekeeper but had been flatly rejected. But this hadn't made him give up. Instead, he wanted Camellia even more. He felt she was a talent among nobles, compared to those fools who relied on their family's power without making any effort. At this time, Kieran and Camellia arrived. After the two princes exchanged simple greetings, Claude behind Wade caught Ian's attention. You're the master of Del Casa? Not, the master is my father. But eventually the position of master will be yours. Wade timely intervened to stop their childish behavior. Ian's withdrawn gaze fell on Camellia. Being involved in this kind of situation made Camellia feel uncomfortable. Hearing they would change places to talk, she felt relieved. Fortunately, Anastasia wasn't here, otherwise she would have received another beating. Claude and Ian each had their own agenda, and neither was willing to leave first. Ian said he still had something to say to Camellia, which left her stunned. Kieran also had a big headache for their conflict. Claude frowned and reminded Ian that Prince Wade was waiting for him. Camellia also quickly stated they could talk another time, but it wasn't the result Ian wanted. Even though he saw her troubled expression, he didn't care and instead walked toward her, but Camellia didn't know what to do. Ian solemnly explained to her, Camelius, you are the most important to me. You haven't answered me yet. Why were you crying earlier? Claude looked at this scene unhappily. At this moment, Kieran came to the rescue. Prince Ian. Seeing his serious expression, Ian quickly said it was just a joke. Claude finally left trustingly. Camellia felt he was clearly angry and couldn't help feeling guilty. Ian pondered thoughtfully seeing this. Then they went to the dining room. As a substitute, Camellia wasn't even allowed to dine at the table, just because Anastasia was afraid she would steal Kieran's spotlight. Wade asked about Camelia's absence. Anastasia lied that Camellia wasn't feeling well and was resting. Claude didn't believe a word of her. His mind was full of the fact that Camellia had been crying earlier. Actually, even if Camellia came to this kind of formal dining occasion, she would probably feel uncomfortable. That's why she intentionally avoided attending. Claude muttered that Camellia would have to make do with candy for dinner again. Thinking of this, the candy in front of him caught his attention. At this time, Ian directed a maid to take some food to Camellia, and told her to tell Camellia that not eating properly was a bad habit. His behavior made Wade think more highly of him. Ian smiled and said, if Camellia still felt ill, how about taking him to Heir? Hearing this, Anastasia was shocked. She wouldn't let Ian disrupt her plans. At this time, Kieran unexpectedly joined in to cause trouble. Thank you for your kindness. If he did, we'll do as you say. Indeed, Ian was serious. What do you think, Lord Claude? Claude was very confused at being suddenly mentioned. I'm asking about the taste of the meat. It's from Heir. Upon hearing this, Claude unhesitatingly spat out the meat he had just eaten. Please forgive my rudeness, but the food of Heir really doesn't suit the taste of Empire people. Seeing Ian gave a meaningful smile, Claude continued, the appearance isn't good, and neither is the taste. At this point, Wade urgently stopped him. Only then did he cease his verbal attack. He then stood up, intending to leave. He really didn't want to see Ian anymore. Camelius Bale. She tried every means to avoid him, but got close with Ian, which really made him unhappy. As he came out, he saw the maid carrying the dish. The maid was startled by his sudden call. So, this food was for Camellia, but in his impression, she preferred sweets. An interesting idea occurred to him. He instructed the maid to take it away and bring the candy from dinner. The fact that Ian wanted to please Camellia with Heir food made him understand that Ian didn't know what Camellia preferred. This discovery made him feel better. The maid knocked for a long time at the door with the candy, but no one answered. Claude frowned. Meanwhile, in the back garden, the maids had organized a farewell party for Camellia. They all were reluctant to see her go. Although she had been on pins and needles in the house every day, somehow she had unknowingly gained so many people who cared about her. Don't forget us when you go to the capital. Thank you for always being so good to us. Knowing that Betty was the one most reluctant to see her leave, Camellia hugged her and expressed her gratitude. Betty repeatedly reminded her not to get hurt and not to wander outside at night. She should be especially careful of those who were nice to her, particularly those who tempted her with food. Of course, the most important thing was to find her mother. Encouraged, Camellia was full of confidence. She also knew it might be the last time she would see them. Suddenly, a large bowl of candy was handed to her. She looked up puzzled, but the maid opposite her just bowed respectfully and left, just as she was wondering who had sent it. A familiar silhouette caught her eye. It was Claude. Only then did she pick up the candy on the table. When she was young, she thought Claude was scary. It was hard for her to define him. He mocked her, and occasionally liked to play pranks. He was like the scent of lavender. Sometimes he would inexplicably be considerate to people. Camellia took a piece of candy and put it in her mouth. The sweet taste immediately spread in her mouth. She pretended not to care, saying she was no longer a child who liked sweets, but her hot ears betrayed her true thoughts. Time quickly came to the next day. Kieran came to say goodbye, but looked haggard. When she learned that Lady Anastasia wouldn't come, she felt a bit disappointed. Seeing her unpleasure, Kieran pulled her into his arms. Considering the propriety between men and women, she pushed him away. At this time, Ian pounced over, also wanting a hug, but was directly ignored by them. When Camellia noticed Ian standing pitifully to one side, she sighed heavily and reluctantly bid him farewell. Suddenly, a figure rushed past. It was Wade, whose condition was worse than Kieran's. "I'm going crazy, I'll never drink Heir liquor again. I'll take this carriage, Camillus. You take the car." Last night she had wondered what they were doing all night, so they all got drunk. At this time, Claude asked if she wasn't getting in the car. He looked radiant and energetic. Seeing her hesitation, Kieran gestured for her to get in the car quickly. "The car is much faster than the carriage. It will be okay, and Lord Claude is also there." Ian sneered. "Isn't that Lord Claude the most dangerous?" Hearing him say such strange words, Camellia didn't want to respond, but her hand was firmly grabbed. Ian leaned down close to her ear and quietly reminded her to be careful. The sudden closeness made her very shy. She scolded at Ian loudly, but he just chuckled. Claude was so jealous that he urged Camellia to go on the car. Hearing this, Camellia hurriedly apologized and got in. Claude blamed Wade for delaying things by drinking too much, but his eyes occasionally stole glances at Camellia. She was really leaving this time. She silently said goodbye to everyone in her heart. Suddenly, a hard brake successfully threw the unbuckled Camellia forward. Fortunately, she was firmly caught by the quick-reacting Claude. Thus, she managed to avoid getting hurt. He puzzledly grabbed her hand, feeling it was really too thin. Afraid of being exposed, she immediately withdrew her hand. "I eat a lot. The candy you sent me yesterday was especially sweet." Actually, there was a question that had been bothering Claude all along. To confirm his guess, he grabbed her hand again and brought it to his nose to sniff. "You smell sweet. It seems those candies were not ordinary sweet." His gesture and words made her face instantly red like a tomato. Then he suggested Camellia could take a nap because it would take them a long time to reach their destination. Seeing how calm the instigator was, her eyes widened. After a while, a huge noise startled Claude. The sleeping Camellia had hit the seat in front. With no other choice, he gently embraced her and let her lean on him. Whether it was when she was little or now, he couldn't help but want to take care of her. Maybe it was because they were too close. He felt that sweet scent was stronger, which made him want to get closer, because the smell from her was really sweet. He was lost in thought but was pulled back to reality by a sudden noise. It turned out a button from his clothes had fallen off. "It seems I'm really going crazy, or heading toward insanity." A dangerous thought jumped into his mind. He stared at her tempting lips and had an impulse to get closer. When he barely restrained the impulse in his heart, the car suddenly hit a rock. Unexpectedly, this accident brought them closer. He blushed and fled in panic. Camellia woke up when they got out of the car, pensively touching the bump on her forehead. She felt her mouth was wet too, thinking she might have drooled while sleeping. Thinking of this, her mood instantly became gloomy. Knowing that Camellia wasn't staying in the dormitory made Claude very unhappy. She explained her father was worried she couldn't adapt to dormitory life, and found her a house outside. With her status, the academy would definitely give her the best room. There was no need to live outside. When he heard her say she was introverted, he teased that her introversion excluded foreigners. She didn't realize that Claude referred to Ian, so she didn't react for a moment. But her behavior was just trying to cover up in Claude's view, so he glared at her fiercely. She finally realized he was referring to Ian and was about to explain something when she was mercilessly interrupted by him, who didn't want to hear that foreigner's name from her mouth. Even though they had arrived at the mansion, the scene of the kiss still lingered in his mind. He actually had feelings for a man. In fact, more than once, he had felt that Camellia wasn't like a man. Whenever he was involved with her, he couldn't help but have wild thoughts. At this time, his subordinate presented a letter from the royal family. At sight of it, he was stunned. Meanwhile, Camellia was plotting something big. Her closet was stuffed with dresses. She looked so different from when she was little, so she was afraid her mother wouldn't recognize her. A few days later, it was her registration day at the academy. The gatekeeper was shocked upon hearing her name, and rushed into the academy to report. She just stood there, which also attracted much attention. The gazes toward her were endless. Soon the principal and his entourage came out personally to welcome her. Eddie, whom she had seen before, was also there, staring at her with a lewd smile. His gaze gave her the creeps. Fortunately, the principal promptly took her to the exam room. "Theodore hasn't stopped praising you. Everyone is curious about your exam results." On the way to the exam room, everyone was discussing her. Suddenly, a familiar figure blocked their way. Camellia was very happy to see the newcomer. It had been several days since she last saw Claude, but facing her greeting, he turned his head away. His sudden evasion made her very confused. Even until she entered the exam room, the discussions about her didn't stop. Claude heard every word of these discussions. At this time, 3 passing students saw Claude and bowed to him. The leader, named Torin, endlessly mocked Camellia as disgusting, saying Camellia was as common as muck, like an illegitimate son brought in from outside. Claude could no longer tolerate Torin and glared angrily at him. Only then did Torin realize his remarks were inappropriate. Claude's next words terrified him. "If you want to keep your tongue, don't gossip in private. You dare to comment on the family matters of Marquise Vale. I think you have no brain, otherwise how would you dare to discuss the affairs?" After a reprimand, Torin was already red with shame. Seeming unconvinced, he clenched his fist, involuntarily admitting he had spoken out of turn first. But wouldn't Camelius become the prey of those who liked men? "I will keep your concerns in mind. Your imagination is quite rich." Dropping these words, Claude entered the exam room. Unexpectedly, as soon as he entered, he saw Eddie in front of Camellia. As he gradually approached, the expression on Eddie's face became clearer in his eyes. He thought Torin's concerns weren't without reason. Looking at Eddie's hand on Camelia's shoulder, he was furious to the extreme. In fact, when Camellia had been studying with Master Theodore before, she always found all subjects interesting, so she began to look forward to academy life. But after receiving the exam paper, she felt displeased, because these questions didn't seem like an exam. It was as if they were judging whether she had the qualifications to be a noble, whether they should accept her into the noble ranks. If this was what the academy was like, perhaps her expectations had been too high. Soon, the exam ended. Eddie took away her test paper. The first thing Camellia did after finishing the exam was to look for Claude. At this moment, he was angrily staring at Eddie. The moment he saw Camellia, he immediately turned his head away again. She couldn't help but feel a tightness in her heart, wondering what was wrong with him. On the other side, the teachers were incredulous as they surrounded Camelia's exam paper, because she had scored full marks. This was the first full score since Kieran. Everyone praised Camellia profusely, since she had decided to live outside. She only needed to confirm her grade in class. Eddie first stated that 9th grade was suitable for her because he was in charge of 9th grade, but the final decision would be announced in a week. The principal was looking for someone to show her around the academy. At this time, Claude, who had been avoiding her, volunteered. "You know, I've been waiting for Camelius to enter the academy." These words made Camelia's heart beat wildly. The next second, she was embraced. Not only that, but Claude also pulled her closer to his side. And so she left the classroom rigidly. Seeing the scene, Wade's gossip spirit began to burn fiercely. When they reached a place where no one was around, Claude completely changed his attitude. He repeatedly urged her never to go to 9th grade. He didn't explain the specific reason, but instead repeatedly emphasized that she absolutely could not go to 9th grade, seeing her constantly asking why. He reluctantly explained that the teacher in charge of 9th grade was named Eddie, and he had a bad reputation. Hearing this reason, she was speechless. "Don't you understand what I mean? Lord Claude, I am a student. I'm not interested in rumors about professors." Currently, she really had no time to care about anything else. She just wanted to graduate as soon as possible. Kieran had already returned, and Anastasia wouldn't let her stay here forever. She just wanted to find her mother quickly and didn't want to add any more troubles. Seeing her taking his warnings so lightly, Claude moved closer to her, warning her to take what he said more seriously. She thought he was just being moody, and quickly changed the subject by mentioning she heard the academy had a super large horse arena. Aware of her intention, Claude still suggested she go to 8th grade, because if she went directly to 9th grade before adapting to the academic life, she would be buried in books for the whole year. After saying this, he turned his head and whistled. The next second, a horse came galloping toward them. Camellia was just about to reach out her hand in greeting, but was interrupted by Claude. He explained it would bite her, because it only allowed its owner to touch it. Glimpsing her expectant look, Claude asked if she wanted to ride, but was rejected. Her tightly pressed lips were shiny, making him remember those beautiful memories again. He reached out to touch her lips. This sudden approach made Camellia a bit at a loss. Claude indicated she had something on her mouth. She hurriedly wiped her mouth, and Claude, who quickly turned his head away, also rapidly reddened his ears. He noticed that the soldiers of the Heir house had come looking for him, so he asked Camellia to leave first. The soldier reported to him that the Emperor had allowed him to command over the investigation, on the condition that the men of Claude join the city watch. Then Claude shared his analysis of this incident to the soldier. "The criminal who hurt Miss Marilyn probably hasn't gone far. The person might be hiding in Louvre. We need someone very familiar with the roads and act tonight." That night, Camellia finally put on women's clothes. She planned to go look for her mother. She was worried about whether her hair color would be too noticeable, but Pippi warmly reminded her that so many years had passed. If even her hair color had changed, her mother might not recognize her. Hearing this, she finally went out with peace of mind. She hired a carriage, and instructed the driver to wait for her in the north. The driver hadn't expected that a noble lady would be so familiar with the roads in the slums. After instructing him to definitely wait for her to come out, she set off on the road home with an anxious heart. Just a little further, and she would be there. Turn that corner, and she could see her long-missed mother. She ran excitedly toward the house where her mother lived. But, unexpectedly at the corner, she collided with someone head-on. The strong impact made her fall backward. At the critical moment, she was tightly embraced. When she was feeling relieved that she hadn't fallen, Claude was already stunned beyond words. Camillus? The moment she heard the familiar voice, her heart dropped. Looking up, she met his incredulous expression. Seeing Claude appear here, she couldn't react for a moment. Once she realized, she quickly turned around and pulled up her hood to hide her face. His sudden appearance scared her, trembling. If Claude discovered her true identity, the consequences would be unimaginable. But the next second she heard his apology. "Excuse me, I mistook you for someone else, miss." At this moment, Claude doubted his own sanity, not understanding why he would mistake this woman for Camilla. Faced with his series of questions, Camilla just shook her head in silence. Afraid that continuing like this would eventually expose her, she kept backing away. But Claude persisted, step by step. He lowered his head, trying to see her face clearly. Hearing him ask if she was mute, she seemed to grab a lifeline and quickly nodded. Seeing she understood what he said, he asked if she was also lost. If she did, they could walk together. Out of desperation, she could only follow him. Soon, Camilla carefully noticed. Claude had been making marks on the walls. It seemed he was really lost. After careful consideration, she plucked up her courage, ran in front of him and spread her arms, pointing in the direction of the exit and indicating he should follow her. In the end, she still chose to help Claude get out first. Seeing that she was obviously very familiar with the roads in Louvre, he asked if she was a local. Camilla, fearing revealing her identity, didn't answer his question. Soon they arrived at the agreed place. Thinking he had been tricked, Claude's face suddenly darkened. "Hey, you're pretending to be mute, right? Who are you really?" If she was exposed here, she would be finished. Thinking it might be a trap, Claude gently placed his hand on his sword. But unexpectedly, the next second, she ran away from him. Her sudden escape caught Claude off guard. Camilla quickly got into the carriage and urgently said, "Go now!" The driver was scared by the situation and thought she was a criminal. She hurriedly denied it and instructed him that if anyone asked where she got in the carriage, he should say he picked her up on the south side of the Lion Bridge. After taking the money, the driver finally started the carriage. Thus, Camilla successfully escaped. The assistant arrived late, because he had also gotten lost and only found his way here by following the marks Claude had left. Claude ordered him to check the carriages crossing the bridge tonight, especially a dark green carriage. He found the guide he wanted. On the other side, Camilla returned home safely. But even so, she was still worried and couldn't sleep all night. Just a little further, and she would have been there. It was just that at that moment, she was lost in thought. Suddenly, Pippi rushed in panic and started tidying up her room. "My lord, it is not the time to be in a daze. Please get ready quickly. Lord Claude is here." By the time she came down, Claude had already been waiting for a long time. Hearing him say she was late, she explained she hadn't slept well and asked why he came so early. He asked in return what she thought. Camilla stated that she wasn't him. How could she know his thoughts? Her answer successfully made Claude laugh. Noticing she hadn't eaten much breakfast, Claude sighed. "You don't need to make do like this. You can eat more. I'm going out with you. Kieran asked me to do that. He repeatedly instructed me to show his cute brother around the capital." She was about to refuse when he interrupted her. "Call me Claude. Don't call me Lord anymore. I don't want to hear it." Camilla had no choice but to agree. Claude pushed the plate toward Camilla. "I advise you to eat more, Camillus." Soon they appeared in the most prosperous part of the city center. The two handsome men attracted frequent attention from passers-by. Claude told her to remember this road, because locals gave directions using the Cohen Bank as a landmark. But Camilla wasn't listening at all. She muttered to herself, "I've heard of this place. The academy is 2.7 kilometers northeast of Cohen, and the palace is 3 kilometers away." Afterwards, both were very quiet. Claude didn't understand his feelings for her. He had been attracted to a man and had kissed him, and even called a woman by his name. He hadn't expected to make such a basic mistake. Looking up, he saw Camilla smiling at him brilliantly. This strange feeling that made impulse triumph over reason concerned him greatly. Camilla was especially happy this whole day. She remarked that the people of Heir all seemed leisurely. Everyone appeared to live in abundance. But Claude said, "Where there is sunshine, there is darkness. The brighter the light, the darker the darkness. Everything must conform to this rule. Don't jump to conclusions." Camilla, who was born from the darkest place, had a different view. People in darkness don't know they live in darkness. Perhaps not knowing would make them happier, because happiness is relative. Seeing people who are different and more excellent than oneself, people feel unhappy. But if they know nothing from the beginning, they won't feel unhappy, and will think that kind of life is natural, and there won't be an issue of satisfaction or dissatisfaction. Claude was left speechless, and his sudden call startled Camilla. "Relax yourself first, we're going to the next place." As soon as he finished speaking, a jar filled with candy was thrown into her hands. Seeing she liked it, Claude teased her for still being a child. Camilla angrily explained she just liked sweet things, telling him not to always treat her like a child. Soon they reached their destination. Claude said to her, "We've seen the light, now let's experience the darkness. We're going to Louvre," entering from the north entrance. Camilla was anxious all the way. She suspected Claude had been suspicious of her. After much hesitation, she decided to take action. "Is the Louvre you mentioned the place I know?" To her surprise, he asked what kind of place she thought Louvre was. Camilla shook her head frantically, appearing repulsed. "What else could it be? I heard it's a place absolutely forbidden to approach. One shouldn't even think about entering. But such words couldn't convince Claude, because looking out from her room, the Lion River could be seen, and across the river was Louvre. Camelia hadn't expected him to notice such a small detail, but she was determined to play dumb till the end, so she pretended to be very frightened. Really? That side of the river is always pitch black at night? I see, so that's Louvre. Soon they arrived at their destination. Claude explained to her that Louvre was viewed as the folly and shame of the empire, a thorn in Heir's side. But Camelia was very worried, guessing that Claude was suspicious about what happened last night, so she lied about being afraid. It smells terrible here, I feel a bit sick. I don't want to be here anymore, let's go back, please. But Claude had no intention of stopping. Even though this place is abandoned, people still live here. It's the dark shadow cast by the bright light you mentioned, isn't it? Camelia was panicking inside but could only pretend to know nothing. She pretended to tremble violently in fear. I want to go back. I'm really scared, please. Her voice trembled as she spoke, her eyes brimming with tears. Claude didn't have the heart to see her pitiable look. In the end, he was defeated and agreed to her request. On the way back, Camelia said nothing, keeping her head down and fidgeting with her fingers, as if truly frightened. But why do I always feel like you know Louvre well? What Claude said startled her. She had no choice but solemnly swear that she had never been there. But what she received was his cold response. She didn't know if he believed what she said, she couldn't read his thoughts. While Camelia was pondering, Claude suddenly turned to look at her. She immediately straightened up like someone with a guilty conscience. We'll take you home first. I have a dinner appointment. It was undoubtedly the most pleasing thing for Camelia today, and she sighed with relief. But Claude, who saw her reaction, said unhappily, a different kind of response. Would be nice every now and then. His random words confused her. Then she heard him continue, you seem so pleased whenever I take my leave. Only then did she realize why he was unhappy, so she spent the rest of the journey trying to cheer him up. Soon they arrived at their destination, and Camelia said goodbye to Claude. To her surprise, he walked straight past her. Before the carriage arrives, I'll impose on you for a while. Hearing this, Camelia was thunderstruck, which made Claude exasperated. Could you stop making that expression? It always makes me feel like I'm the villain. Camelia realized it was indeed her fault, and apologized to him. Just then, a horse caught his attention. It looks like you have guests at home, or perhaps unwelcome visitors? As soon as they entered the house, Camelia sensed something was wrong because the maids were waiting for her arrival. She asked the maid who had come. Before the maid could answer, Claude provided the answer first, a guest from Heir. He stared at the casual guest on the sofa with displeasure, but still greeted him, Prince Ian. Upon hearing this, Ian slowly rose. Well, if it isn't Lord Claude of House Heir. He stretched lazily as if he had been there for a long time. Camelia asked in shock why he had come. Seeing her, Ian smiled brilliantly, but his smile was quite an eyesore for Claude. Seeing that Claude had no intention of leaving, Camelia quietly reminded him it was almost dinner time, but he glared at her because he disliked her calling. He suggested inviting Ian to his estate because he wasn't comfortable leaving them alone. Camelia was very confused about his suggestion. The next second, the candy in her arms was snatched away. Claude explained he didn't want to see her smelling sweet all over again. She really didn't understand what mood he was in. Ian found their playful behavior quite irritating. He approached Camelia and rested his chin on her shoulder. Stop fighting, let's eat quickly. I've been waiting for you all day and I'm starving now. Camelia told Ian to get off, and nervously glanced at Claude, while Claude already came to her side and pulled her close. I'd better host the prince myself. Camelia just arrived in Heir and has no leisure to entertain guests. But Ian insisted he only wanted to stay with Camelia. Due to the fatigue of travel, I plan to spend the rest day lounging here with Camelia by my side. His suggestive words shocked Camelia, but Ian just continued, so show yourself out, Lord Claude. After a while, Claude appeared at the appointed dinner. The lady in the next seat reminded him of Camelia, who always made him restless, so even before taking a bite of food, he hurriedly rushed back. The driver asked where to go. He answered to take him to Camelia, which surprised the driver. I misspoke, go home. He recalled how Camelia had stood between them. Ian, I don't want to lounge here, and Lord Claude, I will see the prince to the house Vale, so it's time for you to leave. Just thinking about how she called Ian rather than Ian Sergio irritated him unreasonably. After all these years, she had only ever called him Lord Claude. He felt Ian must have ulterior motives toward Camelia. Just then, his assistant Aifa arrived and reported that there were clues on the matter Claude had ordered him to investigate. The driver of the dark green carriage that night said a noble lady alighted at the statue of St. Matthew. He didn't know what happened after they parted, but the only noble estate nearby was House Heir, and he remembered he hadn't received any guests, so it meant the driver was lying. Meanwhile, Camelia stared at the candy, puzzled. Even Ian told her to eat properly and consume fewer sweets, but she actually hadn't eaten that much. Then she picked up a piece of candy and asked if he wanted some. Her sudden offering pleased him. He grabbed her hand and happily accepted the feeding, his tongue touching her hand. Seemingly unsatisfied, he even took another and kissed it. Camelia immediately blushed, urging the maid to quickly bring a towel, and criticizing a prince of a country for doing such a disgusting thing. She was about to escape, but was stopped by Ian. With no one to interfere, he wanted to talk to her. After his repeated pleas, Camelia reluctantly sat down, hearing him ask bluntly if Lord Claude knew she was a woman. She reminded him to be careful of eavesdroppers, but Ian disregarded her concerns completely, continuing to ask how long she planned to live with her current identity. Seeing his serious demeanor, Camelia patiently answered that she didn't know. Suddenly, Ian leaned closer and said, his father hoped he could marry a noble from the Cayenne Empire. Undoubtedly, it was the easiest way of diplomacy. Camellia thought he wanted her to help introduce someone, but he firmly rejected this, because he intended to formally ask the permission of Marquis Vale to officially court Camellia. They then stared at each other in silence. Coming to her senses, Camellia urgently questioned if he was crazy. No, you're a woman. How about getting engaged next year? In this way, you can officially make your debut in the social circle and return to being Camellia Vale. Or do you have someone you like? Saying this, his gaze turned sharp. Could it be Claude? With her thoughts exposed, Camellia repeatedly denied it. But Ian remained calm, telling her she had a year to think about it, and he could help her completely get rid of Anastasia. But Camellia still firmly rejected him, because she knew deeply that she wasn't a true noble. Disappearing without a trace was her correct choice. The uninformed Ian still refused to give up, persuading her earnestly. Suddenly, Camellia rose abruptly, scolding him for proposing to someone he'd only met 3 times, which was too sudden. She asked him to respect her choice, but Ian directly stated she could only hold a funeral then. Hearing this, Camellia froze, and asked if he had been eavesdropping. Shouldn't an elegant marchioness speak softly? Am I the only one who heard it? Holding a funeral for the living, what a terrible idea, but Camellia still refused. Even so, I'm unwilling. I don't want to get involved in political games like diplomacy or arranged marriages. However, his following words shocked her even more. This isn't a complicated issue. I'm simply captivated by you. So how about we take a year to get to know each other? Upon hearing this, Camelia's hand holding the candy jar tightened. His persistent behavior disgusted her. As she was fretting, Ian told her Kieran would arrive in 10 days, and before that, they would be alone together. The next day, Camellia officially attended classes at the academy, still attracting many gazes along the way. But she only felt like her body wasn't even her own, since hearing the dreadful news about spending 10 days alone with Ian. She had been so troubled she couldn't sleep all night. She needed to quickly write to her brother to make him return as soon as possible. Just then, a figure quietly approached from behind. It was that stubborn Torin. This time he wanted to get back at Camellia while she was alone. As soon as they met, he belittled Camellia as just an unremarkable copy, and falsely accused Camellia of receiving the academy admission notice only because of the pretty face like a woman's. He said haughtily, "You'd better not mess with me, a 9th grader, when you're just a 1st grader. Otherwise, you'll only tarnish the reputation of House Vale. You know you're the disgrace of the House Vale." Camellia retorted word by word, "It seems your information is really outdated. I have the approval of Marquis Vale. If you ignore me, can I interpret that as an insult to the Marquis? Speaking ill of the Marquis, it seems you're confident in bearing the consequences. Moreover, I'm not a 1st grader, but a 9th grader. We'll see each other often, since you dislikes me. You'd better avoid me on your own." 2 hours later, Camellia was called to the principal's office, because she had told Torin she was in 9th grade. So even though Claude had repeatedly instructed her not to choose 9th grade, Camellia could only disobey his words. The untimely appearance of Officer Brighton made her somewhat panicked. After all, she had just enrolled and quarreled with a student, so it wasn't impossible for the guards to come. Just then, a sudden question startled her. "Do you always have a soft voice?" Camellia was immediately stunned. Then she heard him ask if she was familiar with daggers or similar weapons, to which she replied she wasn't proficient but knew a little. Brighton explained he was here to select a suitable candidate, to disguise as a noble lady, because recently someone had been specifically targeting noble ladies for attacks. Now the nobles were all frightened and wouldn't let their daughters go out. To catch the culprit, they wanted to find bait to lure them out. And since the solidars consisted of burly men, so he wanted to find a young man to pretend, and Camellia fit perfectly. Brighton said she would only need to appear in designated places, such as the library, the theater, or the train station near Louvre. Camellia was still undecided, but her heart leaned toward refusing. Just then, a carriage approached. A curly-haired lady in it caught her attention. Looking carefully, she was shocked. That person was clearly her much-missed mother. She rushed toward the carriage without thinking about anything else, but still didn't catch up. The word mom couldn't even be called out. She couldn't believe she had missed her mother at such close distance in this place. Meanwhile, Claude learned of the intention of the military. Finding out Camellia hadn't agreed yet, he finally breathed a sigh of relief. But he was curious about who came up with the idea of having Camellia dress as a woman. But Brighton kept silent, asking him why he was so angry. Claude explained, "Camelius is the 2nd son of House Vale, and also my friend's beloved brother. If he gets hurt in the slightest, everyone should be prepared." Just then, a visitor came. It was Camellia, who had returned. She came to decide to accept the proposal. Claude also walked out. After nodding to Brighton, he ignored Camellia and walked past her. Camellia realized he was clearly avoiding her again. She didn't have time to think deeply, as Brighton eagerly invited her in. Brighton explained to her that for this operation, they not only had support from House Heir, but also borrowed guards from House Selby. Camellia learned from Brighton that the person who recommended her as bait was Marilyn, who said no one was more suitable than her for this. Marilyn also asked Brighton to help convey an invitation for Camellia to visit House Selby 4 days later, ever since seeing a woman resembling Camellia in Louvre last time. Claude couldn't help overthinking. Hearing she would participate in a dangerous operation, he uncontrollably became sullen, even though it had nothing to do with him. Whenever something concerned Camellia, he could never ignore it. Just then, Wade arrived. Hearing him mention Camellia would enter 9th grade, Claude immediately darkened his face. Wade also told about how Camellia had humiliated Torin, and praised her for being interesting. Although Wade had been confined to the palace recently. He heard Claude taught Torin a lesson for Camilla. He didn't believe Claude's excuse that everything was for Marquise Vale. After all, he was looking forward to. They shared the same predilection. Hearing this, Claude also began to doubt himself. Meanwhile, Pippi was blocking the door, because Camilla had instructed before that Ian couldn't go out without her permission. But how could Pippi stop the agile Ian? He evaded her with a feint and successfully escaped. He kindly told Pippi not to worry, and promised he would never go out alone. The next second, he immediately switched to a serious expression and said to the person behind him, "Tell my brother I'll return in a year." The man replied, "I'm afraid that won't be as you wish. My mission is to take you to return as soon as possible." Ian sneered that he himself didn't know when he had become so close to his brother for an attack. He knew his brother was just worried that if war broke out, he couldn't stand at the front. After all, throughout the country, there was no weapon more powerful than him. That's why his brother sent people to monitor him. He asked the man if he thought his brother's plan would work. The person behind him nodded. Just then, Camilla arrived. Ian put on a bright smile. "Tell my brother it's too early to raise troops. It would be a waste to destroy Cayenne. There are many beautiful things here." When Ian approached, Camilla explained the reason she didn't let him wander around was that many people here didn't like people from Gayor, but Ian shrugged and didn't care. After all, he just wanted to see Camilla. Seeing him always saying mushy things, she stated that they had better go home quickly, so she extended her hand inviting him into the carriage. Her ordinary action of hers made him stunned. He finally gently placed his hand on hers, a week after enrollment. Eddie approached Camilla when she was alone, asking if she could adapt to school life. Camilla asked puzzledly why she hadn't seen Claude attending classes. Eddie told her Claude stayed at the academy not to study, but to monitor Prince Wade because Wade was too free. Just then, a light rain began to fall. Camilla remembered that years ago she left Louvre during the rainy season. Now she was returning to Louvre in the rainy season. The recent encounter with her mother also gave her confidence. Finding her mother was the one thing she definitely couldn't give up. "Camillus, after class today can you?" Before he finished, she quickly said goodbye and left, leaving Eddie confused on the spot. Then he smiled darkly. Later, Camilla went to House Selby as agreed. Accompanied by Pippi, she came to the dressing room, ignoring the butler. She chose a brown wig, because she feared the blonde hair would be recognized by Claude. Seeing the butler had no intention of leaving, Pippi angrily stated that her young master particularly disliked being served by others, and directly closed the door, shutting the butler outside. Meanwhile, Marilyn was extremely touched. She hadn't expected Claude would personally investigate this case. "You're really concerned about my affairs, aren't you? But I'm fine now. You don't need to get involved personally." But Claude stated that as an Heir, he considered it his duty to resolve problems. Originally, he wasn't planning to get involved, but after learning Eddie had applied to escort Camilla, he finally volunteered to wade into this mess. Just then, the maid announced Camilla was dressed. Seeing Camilla in women's clothing, Claude was stunned. Marilyn wondered why he had such an expression. Following his gaze, she found Camilla stood there who was like a graceful young lady, which made feel inferior. Sensing the burning gaze, Camilla suddenly looked up. As their eyes met, the air seemed to freeze. Coming to her senses, Camilla lowered her head in fright. Claude felt a mixture of emotions. "You look quite ridiculous. Anyone wouldn't think you as the second son of House Vale?" Hearing this, Camilla could only fake a smile and ask why he was here. That's when she learned Claude was here to protect him. "You accepted such a strange proposal, making me suffer along with you. Why didn't you refuse?" To Marilyn, however, Camilla became gentle. "It's really impolite of me to appear in front of you like this." But Marilyn was still annoyed about her wearing a brown wig without her permission. Camilla nervously made excuses that blonde hair was too conspicuous. But her small trick couldn't escape Claude's eyes. Just then, the butler handed over a neckband. Though it looked like fabric, it was actually a material used for making knight armor. It could prevent neck injuries. Camilla hadn't expected that Marilyn, who usually disdained her, would be so thoughtful at a crucial moment. Marilyn was about to put it on her, but Claude stopped her with the excuse that they should maintain proper distance. He took the tie and put it on Camilla. Hearing Claude promise that even without such a thing, he wouldn't let her get hurt, her heart suddenly pounded, thinking he really gave her a sense of security. Marilyn watched jealously from the side. After they left, she asked the maid who had helped Camilla dress. Hearing it was Pippi who Camilla brought, she became more suspicious of the true gender of Camilla. Meanwhile, Claude and Camilla sat in a car together again, but the awkwardness remained in the air. Finally, Claude broke the silence first. "You trembled with fear when entering Louvre last time. Why did you decide to help this time?" Camilla had already prepared an excuse. "Because Brighton asked for my help. He said no one else could do it, so I had to help." Seeing her bright smile, Claude instantly blushed. Then he stuffed a short sword into Camilla's hands. "If someone threatened you, just stab him here. And here. Do you understand, Camillus?" As soon as they arrived at the designated location, the Royal Library, Camilla was targeted by Torin. He kept following her, but whenever she turned around, he would hide. Camilla came to the library to find her contact, but she didn't know who it was. And Claude's task was only to escort her. She had to act alone from now on. As she was fretting, a man slowly approached her. The next second, they bumped into each other. "It looks like Torin is completely infatuated with you," Camilius bailed. She didn't imagine that Eddie saw through her disguise at a glance, so could her helper be Eddie? Seeing Torin still peeping, Eddie went into actor mode. "Miss, I'm sorry, it was my fault. How foolish of me not to recognize the honorable niece of Princess Rosina's third cousin and the noble daughter of Duke Helvin's second cousin. Please forgive my rudeness." Seeing Torin leave, Camelia hadn't expected getting rid of him would be so simple. "I heard you would help me. The road to Louvre shouldn't be easy to enter." Eddie pushed his glasses and said it wasn't difficult, because he was from Louvre. Camelia could hardly believe her ears. Before she could recover from her shock, Eddie had looked her up and down. "I must say, you're truly beautiful, Camilius. No wonder he's so worried, you're really a beauty now." He spoke while taking steps toward her. She tried to ignore his disgusting expression, and signaled him to get to the point. Eddie finally got down to business. "I'm familiar with the roads in Louvre. Tonight they will kidnap you. Just let yourself be caught. Once at their hideout, I'll immediately signal the police." Without a doubt, Camelia agreed immediately, because by entering Louvre directly, she might find her mother faster. After discussing business, Eddie reverted to his true nature. "After graduation, would you like to return to the academy as a teacher?" His undisguised gaze made her uncomfortable. Before she could answer, Eddie suddenly moved closer. "Work under me. I've always hoped to have a clever disciple like you." But she had absolutely no interest in this. She was about to leave when she was firmly grabbed by the sleazy Eddie. He had one more doubt that needed her reply. "How do you do it? You're clearly a man. How can you disguise as a woman so perfectly?" As he spoke, his hand was restless, shamelessly touching her palm. Camelia screamed in fear. She finally understood why Claude had cautioned her so. She hadn't expected Eddie would make advances on students. She pushed Eddie away and drew the short sword Claude had given her. Her threat made Eddie even more interested. "We're both men. What are you shy about? I'm just curious how you do it." Cornered against the wall, Camelia was terrified. "Stop!" A familiar voice rang out. The next second, a sword was at Eddie's neck. It was Claude. "I have warned you not to touch students." Just an hour ago, after completing his escort mission, Claude reported to the military. They found the suspect's hideout was near the clock tower, but the informant hadn't revealed the exact location. Because the suspects changed hideouts daily, the hideout might cover the entire Louvre. Brighton said Eddie had also decided to help. This map was drawn by him. Hearing this, Claude asked if it was Eddie from the academy. Brighton replied, "Yes, he should already be at the library with Camelia." Claude angrily said upon hearing this, "Brighton, if Camelia bail hurts, you'll all pay with your lives." When he rushed to the library without delay, he saw this scene. He was about to explode with anger. Eddie backed away repeatedly in fear, until he heard Claude tell him to apologize. Only then did he slightly relax. "Lord Claude, you don't need to overprotect him. Camilius isn't a child. He's about to have his coming-of-age ceremony." Claude had never seen someone so brazen. "I think I should cut off your tongue." But his outstretched hand was pulled back by Camelia, which made Claude even more displeased. In fact, Camelia was just afraid he would act impulsively. Moreover, there were many academy students in the library. She feared it would damage his reputation. Claude suppressed his anger. "I'm warning you for the last time, Eddie." But Eddie asked if Claude had the right to criticize him. These words struck Claude deeply. Knowing when to stop, Eddie apologized to Camelia and left. Faced with Camelia's thanks, Claude ignored her, only concerned about what Eddie had done to her. He couldn't believe that even after witnessing it himself, Camelia would still lie to him, claiming nothing had happened. He couldn't imagine what would have happened if he hadn't arrived in time. He grabbed Camelia back and forced her to look at him, saying he'd repeatedly warned her to be careful. "But I didn't know the contact person was Eddie. It hurts. Let go of me." "Let you go. And then what? Who will you hide behind next?" This question confused Camelia. Before she could react, he continued, "When will you behave like a man? Your current appearance and your actions are truly ridiculous." Being accused for no reason, Camelia felt extremely wronged. "I've never avoided something. If you think I'm ridiculous and hate me, don't care about me. I can handle my own affairs. Without your help, I've lived well until now. Why do you treat me like this? What have I done to make you angry? Because I'm not like a man? What does it take to be like a man?" She hysterically poured out all her grievances. Then Claude pinned her against the bookshelf. Though he meant to show concern, his words betrayed him. "You make me very unhappy. You're an eyesore. I can't stand you, Camilius Vale." Camelia looked at him in disbelief, sadly saying she knew, but was denied by Claude. "I said I know. I've known since you called me a counterfeit." Tears welled up and spilled over. Claude hadn't expected she would remember his childhood joke until now. Camelia walked right past Claude. "Please forgive my rudeness, Lord Claude. I will try my best to not appear before you." Back home, she was in extremely low spirits. To not worry Pippi, she lied that she was just tired from wearing formal clothes. Seeing she was hungry, Pippi left to prepare food for her. Looking at the night outside the window, her thoughts wandered. What Claude said bothered her greatly. Just then, Ian arrived. During the day, he had encountered Camelia dressed as a woman, which captivated him. Unfortunately, she had already changed back to men's clothing. Even though previously, no matter how he begged, she wouldn't wear women's clothing for him, he was curious what reason prompted her this time. Because it was a secret operation, Camelia didn't tell him the reason, only saying she had business today. She asked Ian why his hair was wet. Her caress was always what Ian craved. Then he leaned in, startling Camelia greatly. She felt he was always doing strange things. Her panic amused Ian, I just saw you looked cold and wanted to hug you. I don't have any impure thoughts, don't worry. Camellia didn't believe his words. Then his hand covered her cheek. It will rain again soon. It's the rainy season, so today is cold. Camellia knew he was trying to comfort her. Although she couldn't understand his intentions, she still refused his kindness. As soon as she got up from the bed, Ian frivolously lay down on it. Suddenly, Camellia asked if he could teach her how to use a knife tomorrow. The next day, Ian taught her to use a knife as promised. The blade should point downward for effective attack. The vital points are here and here. The familiar words reminded her of Claude again. Seeing her distracted, Ian was jealous and attacked with lightning speed. Before Camellia could react, he pulled her into his arms. Camellia demanded to know what he was doing. Ian smirked. When facing someone with a knife, once you're careless, you lose. Indeed, Ian cared about why she suddenly wanted to learn how to use a knife. Camellia gripped the knife in her hand tighter. Claude's words echoed in her mind. She explained she just wanted to prove she didn't need anyone's protection, taking advantage of his carelessness. She launched an attack. A few days later, Camellia learned that Eddie had been expelled. She understood it must have been Claude's doing. Before she could recover from her shock, Torrin called out to her, ignoring his obvious desire to speak. She turned to leave, but was stopped in her tracks by his question. Do you have a sister that nobody knows? But what greeted him were Camelia's cold words. How rude of you to suggest such a thing. Do you not think before you speak? Just then, Claude passed by and said that they were in his way. As Claude got closer and closer to the prompt, Camellia bowed respectfully in greeting, but he was clearly still angry about what happened that day. Ignoring her and left directly, she felt some sadness and recalled his words he said before. A few days later, Camellia was wearing women's clothing again. Because the hair color was personally chosen by Marilyn, she had no way to refuse. Her exquisite beauty made Marilyn jealous. You look so beautiful, not like a man. I even suspect you're actually a woman. Isn't it ridiculous? Marilyn muttered to herself and then opened a box. This is my gift to you. It will protect your heart. Seeing how Marilyn cared for her, Camellia was truly grateful to her. But then she said with a serious look, that I look pretty doesn't mean I'm not a man, and I'll protect my heart myself. She unbuttoned her chest to reveal she was wearing a bulletproof vest. When she arrived at the reception hall, her earlier confidence vanished because Claude kept staring at her, and Ian had also arrived. Wade had issued an order that criminals could be killed on the spot, but Claude said that if they killed the criminals on the spot, the hostage would be in danger, and that hostage was none other than Camellia. Claude insisted they couldn't put Camellia in danger. Camellia hadn't expected him to be so concerned about her, especially he had said he could stand her not long ago. Wade had considered this point as well, so he had brought Ian to help, since Ian was known as a killing machine. The reason Wade insisted on accepting help from an enemy country was because the Bale family would arrive in the capital 2 days later, so they needed to resolve this matter before then. Otherwise, if the Marquis found out what they did to Camellia, they might face more than just confinement. But Claude strongly disagreed with their idea of putting Camellia in danger just because they feared confinement, so he angrily turned and left. Camellia also rose to leave because she had to act with Claude. Before leaving, she specifically instructed Ian not to show himself. Otherwise, things would become complicated, and she firmly stated that she didn't need him to protect her. She would protect herself with her dagger. On the way to Louvre, Claude and Camellia fell into an awkward silence again. Camellia tried to break the awkwardness by talking to him, but he remained looking out the window as if he hadn't heard. Then she mentioned that Eddie had been dismissed, so now they had no one to guide them. Camellia was shocked when Claude said he would guide them himself, since the last time they went to Louvre, it was she that led him out. Don't worry, I memorized the roads. We've already arranged it. Louvre's informant will reveal your information to the criminals, so they have the excuse to kidnap you, and then everything will go smoothly. After saying this, he fell silent again. After much thought, he finally said what he had been holding back. That was, he had seen a woman who looked exactly like Camellia a few days ago. Her heart skipped a beat, and she struggled to remain calm. The capital is so big, there must be people who look like me. Torrin also said he saw a woman who looked like me, but Claude clearly wasn't so easily fooled. I wanted to find that woman to confirm something. I think you might be that woman, Camillus. After getting out of the carriage, they wandered around the outskirts of Louvre. They stayed very close to each other along the way, but Camellia always thought it inappropriate, because if she were the suspect, she wouldn't want to make an enemy of the house Heir. But Claude was unconcerned, believing that if Camellia pretended to be his lover, it would be their excuse for kidnapping her. Because from outward appearances, she didn't look like his sister at all. But Miss Selby is your lover. Isn't this common knowledge? If Marilyn is my true lover, then you are my secret lover. Suddenly, Camelia's attention was drawn to a man, who, with a hat on the bridge, was clearly the doctor who had frequented her mother's business when she was a child. Claude suddenly interrupted her thoughts. It was time for him to withdraw. I'll have sweets waiting for you, Miss Camellia. Claude actually called her real name, which frightened her greatly. She carefully asked if he had just called her Camellia. Claude bent down and explained that he had just spoken casually, with him saying his warm breath blew on her ear. You sit here, they will come to approach you soon. He seemed seemed worried and patted her shoulder, insisting that she be careful. Watching him walk away, Camellia became thoughtful. Although he can't stand me, he is still as kind as ever. Is he just treating me with the grace expected of a high-ranking peer, or does he really believe me to be a woman? Camellia waited alone for a long time, and finally someone approached her, but she never expected they would send children. They asked if she could help them buy bread. Camellia worried that if she cooperated too easily, the suspects would become suspicious, so she handed them a gold coin and told them to buy whatever they wanted. Seeing this, the girl suddenly became agitated. No, the grown-ups will take the money. Please buy us bread. Just one loaf, please. Seeing this, Camellia gently suggested they hide the money secretly, then agreed to buy them bread. After turning away, her expression darkened. She couldn't accept criminals using such pitiful children for their crimes. The girl leading the way reminded her of herself as a child. She was the same age as them when she would search everywhere for cheap and delicious bakeries. You must be starving, let's hurry. Little did Camellia know that her kindness would later save her life. She hadn't finished buying bread when the girls suddenly said they weren't hungry anymore and wanted to go back. Camellia finally noticed the path behind the girl. It was a small path leading to Louvre, and she guessed the suspects had set an ambush there. So she asked the girl for a favor. After whispered something to the girl, she cheerfully sent them away with a smile. She deposited all the bread she bought at the store, asking the shopkeeper to give it to the two children when they returned, and she only took one loaf for herself. After arranging all this, she set off on the path to Louvre. As she expected, people were lying in ambush along the way. Then she was drugged by the suspects, with her handbag falling to the ground. The suspects originally believed it would be difficult to kidnap a noble lady. At this point, the doctor felt Camellia looked familiar, so they decided to tie Camellia up and take her away first. After they left, Claude arrived at the scene. If they followed the tracks, they could find the suspect's base, but Claude couldn't wait for backup. He needed to find Camellia now. Ian said he wanted to go with him, but was refused by Claude. Prince Ian, you'd better stay out of this. Camellia has been kidnapped, and you want me to stand by? This is part of our plan. Strictly speaking, this is a matter for the Cayenne Empire. It may be a state matter to you, but to me, it's Camelia's personal matter. His words made Claude momentarily lose focus. Then Claude asked Ian what Camellia meant to him. Ian immediately stopped and replied, someone to share my future with. While they were in confrontation, the children from earlier appeared. They immediately recognized that the bag belonged to Camellia. The hot-tempered Ian immediately drew his sword, threatening the children to tell where the owner of the bag had gone. Claude stopped him. Please put away your sword, Prince Ian, they are just children. Hearing this, Ian just smiled, thinking that if Claude knew Camellia wasn't a man, he didn't believe Claude could remain so calm. He mocked Claude for not understanding that the more innocent, the more cruel. Ignoring his words, Claude strode toward the children. The children cried, please let us go. They said if we brought that lady over, they would spare us. The shopkeeper from earlier also ran over and explained to them, these children are innocent. The criminals are very fierce, and residents nearby dare not defy them. I saw them go toward that alley. The girl tremblingly summoned courage. That kind lady told me to keep this bag. She said if I met a handsome man with blue eyes, I must give it to him. Claude opened the bag, and the bread inside was so out of place. Sure enough, when he looked up, he saw the marks Camellia had left. Breadcrumbs would show them the way. Meanwhile, on a broken boat by the river, Camellia was blindfolded and thrown on the ground. A kidnapper was about to cut off her fingers to send to Claude, but was stopped by the doctor nearby. He thought Camellia looked too familiar. When Camellia slowly opened her eyes, she saw a group of kidnappers standing in front of her. Her nerves instantly tensed. The doctor squatted beside her, examining her closely. Finally realizing that, except for her hair and pupils, she really looked like Laura. He thought that she was the daughter of Laura and exclaimed that she had grown up. Then he removed the cloth from her mouth, but they were met with her anger. Why do you target women and children? Why do such despicable things? Hearing this, the doctor still played coy. You live in luxury every day. It doesn't seem like a question you should ask. Camellia continued to berate them. You have weapons. You should confront people who are armed instead of kidnapping women and children. You're not dispensing justice. You're committing crimes. What's next? Imprisonment or murder? The accused kidnappers immediately darkened their faces. Then she was slapped by the doctor. Seeing you talk such nonsense, I can confirm you're not the daughter of Laura. I must have mistaken you. Then they planned to cut her hair to threaten Claude. Camellia suppressed her inner fear and deliberately mentioned the children helping the kidnappers to buy time. She asked if they really planned to kill the children who helped them. Why do you worry about that? They've all been abandoned by their parents anyway. It's because of you nobles that people can't fill their stomachs and abandon their children. That is to say, it's your fault those children became like that. Hearing this, Camellia found it laughable. Don't self-righteously defend yourself. You use children as criminal tools and kill them when you're done. Is that justice? With these words, the kidnapper grabbed her hair in anger and told her to shut up. Faced with his threats, Camellia remained fearless. The kidnapper was speechless with rage and quickly cut off half her hair. He didn't understand why she was still so arrogant, refusing to give up her dignity even at death's door. But he believed once blood was shed, she would surrender. After all, there had already been 12 nobles who died at their hands. The doctor also mocked that she probably didn't know what a life like that was inferior to an ant. But what the kidnappers didn't know was, those children they abandoned, not even worth ants, had been protected, because Camellia had anticipated the kidnappers would kill the children. Then she freed herself, slowly stood up, and informed the kidnappers that the children were now in the custody of the guards. I'm curious how you plan to silence them. What awaits you is being taken away by the nobles you hate most. What's more, I'm not the lover of the young duke. I am Camellia's Bale, the second son of Marquis Bale. My family has no need or want of me. If you pull the trigger, you'll expose your position. I doubt visionaries such as yourselves surely wouldn't choose to die in vain, but the kidnappers didn't believe a marquis would abandon his own son, thinking they could escape by taking her hostage. However, her following words completely panicked them. I have told you that I'm expendable. The soldiers will shoot me first, then capture all of you in one sweep. That's why I'm here. Seeing the crumbs in her hand, the kidnappers finally realized that she had left marks without them noticing. The fooled kidnappers immediately decided to kill her. To buy time until Claude arrived, Camellia pretended she wanted to know why they did this before dying, but she never expected the reason was simply that they couldn't eat enough. The ornaments you wear are enough to feed my family for several months, but now jewels and money are useless. If we're exposed here, it's all over. An emotionally agitated kidnapper pointed a gun at Camellia. The doctor tried to stop him, but it was too late. The kidnapper had already pulled the trigger. Then Camellia fell into a pool of blood. The gunshot quickly exposed their position, and the Imperial Guard rushed over with lightning speed, realizing they would be completely wiped out. The doctor thought of a way to avoid exposing the mastermind. He stabbed himself in the arm with a sword, to pretend as a hostage, begging the guards to save him. Then someone asked where the young lady was. He looked up to see Claude and Ian staring at him with piercing eyes. The next second, a gun was pressed against his head. Claude's face was so dark that it could scare anyone to death. The doctor tremblingly pointed to a door. Hearing the doctor say Camellia was dead, Claude felt like the sky had collapsed. The image of Camellia lying alone in a pool of blood appeared in his mind, pinning him to the spot, unable to move. Just then, Ian behind him told him to calm down, pointing out that the doctor and kidnappers were in league. The exposed doctor still lied that he was called by the kidnappers, claiming he fled for his life after seeing a woman die. These words were undoubtedly another heavy blow to Claude. He couldn't imagine Camellia leaving him like this. Ignoring Ian's calls, he strode toward the broken boat. He had to personally confirm if what the doctor said was true, but when he opened the door, he was stunned. Camellia lay motionless in the blood. Coming to his senses, he quickly ran to Camellia. Fortunately, he found that she wasn't dead. After confirming it, he carefully lifted her. At this moment, Camellia also woke up. Claude's eyes instantly turned red, concerned if she was hurt. It turned out that Camellia had stabbed the kidnapper beside her at the critical moment. Since the vital organs weren't hit, the kidnapper should still be alive, which meant she had captured a suspect alive. But none of that mattered now. What mattered was that she was safe. Just then, a guard came to report that the ship was sinking because the last person to escape had punctured the hull. After Claude softly asked Camellia if she could still walk, Ian powerfully said, "I'll take him. He needs the treatment now." So Ian took Camellia from Claude, but this harmonious scene looked particularly jarring to Claude. He hated why that person was Ian and not himself. At this time, the guard arrived. Claude ordered the pursuit of suspects with a fierce face, and to interrogate the suspect on the ground to confirm who owned the ship. After giving these orders, he also left the scene. Ian took the injured Camellia home and thoughtfully treated her facial wounds, but when he was about to treat her other injuries, he was refused. Ian teasingly stated his skills to treat wounds were better than her maid's. Then he asked why she did such a dangerous thing. Camellia said it was because she could help. Knowing this, he deliberately increased the pressure on the wound. He never thought she would risk her life for such a reason. Then Ian said he didn't want that she put herself in danger, despite he actually liked her to behave so bravely. Hearing this, Camellia scolded him not to joke, but Ian seriously stated he wasn't joking. Then he smiled and moved closer to Camellia, giving her a kiss on the cheek. The sudden intimacy gave Camellia goosebumps. However, Ian claimed it was punishment for Camellia tempting him. Then he happily left. Outside the room, Pippi was anxiously waiting, though Ian appeared composed. Claude, being too concerned about Camellia, had been bothering him. He wondered if Claude already knew about Camelia's identity. Just as he was thinking this, Claude appeared. Behind him was a guard in Gaillard attire. "You seem to have placed someone around Camelia's. Prince Ian, this is Cayenne, not Heir. You're just a guest here, yet you're planting spies. You seem to have forgotten your status." But Ian wasn't flustered at all, and instead revealed a meaningful smile. "He isn't monitoring Camellia, but someone my brother sent to monitor me. I'm very sorry about what happened." But his explanation couldn't convince Claude. Ian also understood he didn't believe him. Although Claude didn't seem to want to pursue it, it didn't mean he wouldn't. "You, come with me." In the room, Camellia was in pain with sweat pouring out. As Ian said, Pippi treating wounds were indeed not as good as him. Pippi was so anxious that she was almost crying, but Camellia asked her to continue. As expected, she was again in agony. Just as Pippi was fumbling, Claude arrived. His sudden appearance scared them. Then he took over, applying the medicine. He came here wanting to see how badly Camellia was hurt. After confirming her arm was fine, he wanted to check if her ribs were broken, but Camellia immediately crossed her arms over her chest in a stance of defiance. Seeing her refusal, he didn't insist, but urged her to lie down and rest well. Camellia was curious about the purpose of his sudden visit, thinking whether he was still suspecting she was the woman he encountered in Louvre. To cut off unnecessary trouble, she mustered her courage to lie lie to him. Lord Claude, I am not the woman you're looking for. For a moment, the room was so quiet and only the patter of rain could be heard. But Claude just reached out to gently touch her cheek, thus creating an ambiguous atmosphere. After nearly losing her forever, Claude finally understood his own feelings. Whether Camellia was a man or woman no longer mattered to him. Then he informed Camellia that the doctor had escaped due to those stupid guards believing slander. Now he needed a witness, and that witness was Camellia. But considering her current physical condition, he didn't intend to have her testify. Besides, he himself remembered what the doctor looked like. Seeing him flipping through books, Camellia asked if he came to read. Claude was quite speechless by her words. Mentioning witnesses, Camellia suddenly remembered something. The two children who had given her bag to Claude needed a place to stay. Although she wanted to take them in, she didn't have the authority to hire them, so she wanted Claude to help shelter them. Because she was afraid that the kidnappers would target the children, especially since they had said they would kill the children. She scolded that those bastards not only hurt Miss Selby, but also many innocent women. Hearing Claude ask why she got involved in this incident, she replied that it was because she could help. Her voice grew increasingly small, because she also had a private motive, which was to enter Louvre to find her mother. Seeing Claude still didn't seem to agree to her commission, she mentioned Marilyn. For the sake of your fiancé, don't you want to catch those bad people? And you can ask the two children be witnesses if you take them in. But before she could finish, she was interrupted by his sudden laughter. Claude then sat down beside her and moved close to her ear to explain, "First, I want to emphasize that Marilyn and I are not engaged. So guess, am I joking with you or trying to prove I'm crazy?" In fact, his attention had completely focused on Camellia at some point. Wherever he went, he was always the center of attention. But he had grown tired of such interactions. One day, Princess Rosina asked if he could make friends. Seeing him be silent, Rosina continued, "I gave up it long ago. Even the friend you think you have, like Kieran, will he one day bow before you, right?" Only then did he realize she was right. No one would truly treat him sincerely. That was the flaw that came with the power he possessed. But just as he was getting used to this, Camellia appeared. The mighty second son of Housevale was frightened by gunshots. She appeared before him as Kieran's brother. Unlike other nobles, she didn't know how to hide her feelings. The first time he felt her piercing gaze, it made him really happy. But when he learned that her awkward gaze was directed only at him, he somehow felt very unhappy. He didn't realize that perhaps from the first moment he saw Camellia, he was destined to fall deeply and be unable to extricate himself until he was completely consumed by his complex feelings. Suddenly, his thoughts were pulled back to reality by Camelia's words. "Lord Claude, don't you hate me? Why do you hate me?" Claude faced his real feelings this time and answered, "I don't hate you, Camelius." Even after he left, Camellia could still feel her heart pounding. A strange feeling occupied her heart, and the hand Claude had touched was now burning hot. She could only repeat in her mind, "Get a hold of yourself, Camellia." A few days later, Anastasia and Kieran arrived in the capital. But when Anastasia saw her wounds, she showed no concern, instead wanted to punish her. Camellia hadn't expected to receive scolding instead of comfort. It made her feel very sad. Fortunately, Kieran was still as warm as ever and gave her a big hug, comforting her that no matter what, as long as she was safe, it was fine. The next second, he suddenly changed his face. "I heard that there were some troublesome people torturing you while I wasn't in the capital. Now I'm here. No one will torture you anymore." For Camellia, her brother was like an angel fallen from heaven, easily solving the troublesome Ian. Not only that, Kieran conquered the capital's social circle in just 1 week in the capital. Princess Rosina's fiancé, the heir to Housevale favored by the emperor. It wasn't just these titles that worked. Kieran himself was truly excellent in all aspects. Just as she was internally singing her brother's praises, a dense crowd quietly surrounded her. "You really look like Lord Kieran. Can you help me pass a message to him?" The sudden change left her stunned. When she looked back up, she ran away. She had thought that no one would pay attention to her after her brother's return, but she never expected they would all try to approach her brother through her, to escape their encirclement. She entered a place she had never been before. The intense running pulled at her wounds, causing waves of pain. After a while, she noticed the furnishings in the room. She didn't even know there was such a place in the academy. She vaguely detected a scent of lavender. Focused on observing her surroundings, she thought to rest before leaving. But the solid feeling when she sat down made her eyes widen. Suddenly, she heard someone calling her name. Discovering she had accidentally stumbled into Claude's private space, her scream instantly resonated throughout the house. She tried to get up but was firmly held around the waist. Claude indicated she shouldn't make noise. "Are you sleeping? What's wrong with me sleeping in my private space?" She immediately stated she had entered by mistake, but Claude never loosened his hand holding her. She asked him to let go first. To her surprise, instead of letting go, he completely encircled her. This feeling was strange and awkward, but she didn't dislike it. She tried her best to suppress her feelings that ignited quickly without warning at this moment. Hearing Camellia say she smelled of sweat, Claude said he couldn't smell anything. Camellia immediately retorted, "I've been running all day today. If you can't smell it, you should see a doctor." Claude smiled brightly, insisting there was no sweat smell on her. Seeing she didn't believe him, Claude teasingly said her sense of smell was problematic. Unexpectedly, Camellia leaned her whole body on him the next second. She raised her nose to smell his scent like a puppy. Claude was confused by her behavior, but she continued nonchalantly, "You smell like lavender, and my nose is fine. It's your sense of smell that has a problem." Claude quickly sat up when he came to his senses. Camellia was startled by his sudden sudden movement. Just then, the outside also quieted down. To cover her embarrassment, she stood up to leave. Before leaving, she hesitantly asked her question. Lord Claude, why don't you ask about what happened on the boat that day? Claude sat up straight and replied, Camelius, I came forward to protect you. Other matters don't concern me. The impact of these words on her was no less than his sudden closeness earlier, due to being too shy. She quickly closed the door and left. Actually, so did Claude, whose heart was pounding. At the same time, Camelia's heart was also beating fast. A bold guess emerged. Could it be that Lord Claude discovered my identity? Or does he like the company of men? Suddenly, Ian appeared behind her. Ian was different from Claude. His affection to Camelia was always open and direct. I miss you, but a certain villain doesn't give me the chance, so I'm taking a risk to see you. The villain he referred to was Kieran. At this moment, he was investigating responsibility for the previous kidnapping incident. So to catch the criminals attacking noble ladies, Eddie recommended my brother. And you also agreed to his suggestion? The officers were sweating profusely upon hearing his questioning. Then they referred to Ian, who disappeared along with Camelia and seemed to be involved, because 7 people died that day, but the bullets in the bodies weren't from their country. Although those who died were criminals, they still needed to clarify the identity of the killer. Kieran nearby stopped them from investigating further. Now, he only cared about where Eddie was, just as the officers were in a difficult position. Claude answered this question. Eddie has been dismissed. Is Princess Rosina happy that the whole capital is buzzing because of you? I heard you are favored by many people. Kieran smiled at him. Are joking me? I only like Rosina. But do you have something on your mind? You look agitated. Not your style at all. Hearing this, Claude finally stated the purpose of his visit. I saw someone who looked exactly like Camelius not long ago. Kieran immediately had a moment of panic, but he quickly regained composure, joking that there existed a woman whose beauty rivaled that of his young brothers. Claude seriously stated he wasn't joking. Kieran, afraid of revealing clues, didn't plan to stay long, but Claude didn't intend to let him leave easily. Aware of his intention, Kieran finally dropped his smiling demeanor. I don't know what answer you're trying to get from me. I have to go. I arranged to have dinner with Rosina. Claude knew that Rosina was just an excuse at a glance. In his eyes, Kieran was very bad at lying. Meanwhile, Ian told Camelia he would soon return to his country. Although he didn't want to go back, he had no reason to delay. After Kieran's engagement ceremony was over, he would have to leave. Before that, he wanted to give Camelia a gift, telling her she could have whatever she wanted. Camelia knew his feeling, but she couldn't respond. Seeing her reluctance, Ian didn't press her but changed his proposal. He offered to help her enter Louvre because he knew that's what she wanted most. I'll keep watch for you, thus you can go find what you're looking for. Camelia instantly became unsettled, asking how he knew. But Ian just stroked her cheek. After coming here, my eyes have only focused on you, so I know many things of you. I told you I fell in love with you at first sight. At the moment, there was a rustling sound. Ian looked up and saw Claude, who had come looking. Surprisingly, Claude didn't step forward to stop them. Instead, he turned to leave. Camelia turned her head following Ian's gaze, but was pulled back by Ian. He asked how he could help her. Although his proposal was very tempting, Camelia still refused. As a matter of fact, Ian used the pretext of giving gifts because he was afraid she would forget him. But she truly couldn't respond to his feelings, so she quickly fled the scene. But Ian didn't plan to give up. He decided to speed things up. 10 days later, Kieran and Camelia came to the Capitol Police headquarters. After interrogation, the kidnappers all confessed they acted on the doctor's instructions, but there were others behind the doctor. Kidnapping wasn't their real purpose. Their true aim was to raise funds. Camelia guessed her mother might have been threatened, and perhaps her mother's situation was more dangerous than she imagined. After returning, she went swimming again. Recently, security in Louvre was tight, making her hope to find her mother seem distant. Just as she was lost in thought, a figure quietly approached. I wondered who it was. It's you, Camelius. Camelia met Claude in this way again. She hadn't expected him to come, and nervously covered her chest. Claude unbuttoned his shirt to swim with her, and remarked he hadn't swum since leaving Corsair. Camelia was instantly at a loss, asking if he wasn't hunting. Claude said he was hunting, but recently a prey kept appearing in his hunting ground. Realizing what he meant, she asked blankly, "The prey you refer to, is that me?" He said whatever she thought of while rebuttoning his shirt. Camelia puzzledly asked if he wasn't going to swim. Hearing Claude tease that she indeed looked forward to swimming with him, she quickly denied it. Claude had come hunting with Wade. He didn't want others to see Camelia like this. "You had better not come out until I'm gone. And don't swim further in. The water there is deeper than your height." Camelia fumed. "This depth is very easy for me to handle." Her cute appearance made Claude laugh out loud. It was the first time Camelia had seen him smile so brightly, so beautiful she couldn't look away. Just one false sweetness was enough to make her unforgettable, but her true self was false in others' eyes. She felt how terrible her false life. At the same time, Claude had already met up with Wade. Reflecting on what had just happened, he thought Camelia was incredibly cute. The experienced Wade immediately saw that he fell in love, and teased him that he had today. Claude lowered his eyes, and didn't know how to handle those feelings that captivated him. A few days later, at the royal banquet, the news that Claude had brought to justice the criminals who attempted to harm his fiancée became the hot topic of conversation. Marilyn became the center of attentions, which greatly satisfied her vanity, but the appearance of one person made her frown. That was Camelia. She had heard that Camelia had made great contributions in this raid. At this time, Wade, Claude, and Kieran entered. Their appearance immediately attracted everyone's attention. The scene scene of Claude looking for Camellia was keenly captured by Marilyn. The atmosphere among the three became awkward. Later, Camellia went to the back garden, feeling tired from the event. She recalled her conversation with Lady Bale before the banquet, who had requested that she would return to Corsair alone after Kieran's engagement ceremony, and asked her to observe other nobles carefully. If she was confident in fitting in, Anastasia would give her a choice. Camellia didn't understand why the lady insisted on giving her choices. If she decided to be a noble, it might mean she would have to dress as a man for the rest of her life. Just as she was lost in thought, someone called out to her. She looked up and met the fierce gaze of Torin. Seeing it was Torin, she ran away, since she had accidentally encountered him in the library. He had been following her like a ghost. Torin chased after her, asking if she was the woman from the library. Camellia responded that it was none of his business, hearing him accuse her of being rude before. Camellia angrily replied that he was the one who asked the rude question first. Torin stopped chasing and accused her of being Kieran's imitation. Hearing this, Camellia sarcastically remarked he was still as rude as ever, and provocatively asked, "Is it so important whether I'm that woman or not? Could it be that you're attracted to me dressed as a woman?" As his thoughts were exposed, his face instantly turned red. Then Camellia told him that if he wanted to challenge her, he should properly propose a duel, otherwise his constant harassment would be troublesome. As she turned away, she bumped right into someone. It was Claude. He asked if she was playing hide-and-seek with Torin. Camellia immediately denied it, stating they were just talking. Claude asked what conversation would lead to dueling, and demanded Torin explain. Torin was startled by his sudden questioning. He explained he just wanted Camellia to apologize for insulting him. Before Claude could speak, Kieran stepped in to question. "How did my brother insult you? Tell me. If your reason is valid, I'll make him apologize." Faced with his powerful presence, Torin kept backing away. Seeing this, Camellia quietly moved her steps, wanting to escape, because she knew her brother would handle it for her. But her small movements didn't escape Claude's eyes. Just as she turned, he stopped her. Claude pointed out everything stemmed from her and asked where she thought she was going. Camellia explained that if she stayed, it would definitely cause a conflict, so she might as well return back the banquet. As soon as she finished speaking, Kieran also noticed the change here. Camellia said she thought this was better. Only if she left could her brother let his anger out. Claude commented that her skin was getting thicker with a smile. Their flirtatious interaction annoyed Kieran, who complained that his sister's romantic entanglements were endless. Then he ordered Camellia to return to the banquet hall. Hearing the command, Camellia happily ran away. Extremely frustrated, Kieran first dismissed Torin, because he had more important things to confirm. He questioned Claude about suddenly disappearing during their conversation, asking if it was because of Camellia. Claude denied it, saying they just happened to meet. Kieran retorted that such a coincidence was really hard to believe. Claude asked what he was trying to express, and suggested he shouldn't overprotect Camellia. But Kieran pointed out that the one overprotecting Camellia was actually Claude himself. Claude immediately stopped in his tracks when he heard this, because he knew in his heart that the one who could never let go of Camellia was actually himself. A few days later, Ian came to House of Vale to propose marriage without telling Camellia. He had already learned her true identity from Kieran. Seeing the Marquise Vale looking troubled, he made a concession. He suggested holding a debutante ball for Camellia a year later, and after she returned to her female identity, they would get engaged. Lady Bale was shocked to hear this. Trembling, she reminded him that Camellia only wanted to live peacefully, so she suggested Ian could choose one of the imperial princesses for marriage. Her reasonable proposal was ruthlessly rejected by Ian, who stated he only wanted Camellia. The Marquis pointed out that Camellia had always lived as a male, and if they were to arrange a marriage, they would need to consult her opinion first. Ian solemnly promised to do everything possible to make Camellia agree, and declared he would take it that the Marquis and Marchioness had already agreed. The Marquis then told Ian that the Emperor wanted to see him before that, because it concerned the neutral territory, and stated that they would discuss his marriage to Camellia after this matter was settled. Kieran, who had been silent all along, finally exploded at this moment. He told the Marquis there was no need to inquire about the owner of the neutral territory, because Prince Ian standing before them was the owner of the neutral territory. Just the day before, Claude's father, Duke Heir, had arrived in the capital. He had brought a huge diamond of extremely high purity, which came from the diamond mines in the neutral territory. The discovery had also attracted the high attention of the Heir royal family, so they were eager to find out who owned the neutral territory. Duke Heir stated that he had been the target of multiple assassination attempts on his way. He suspected it was most likely done by people from Heir, but in the Empire, there were also many forces that wanted his life. To better ensure his safety, the Emperor kept him in the palace. After leaving the reception room, Kieran was very angry with a stern face. Although he had known for a long time that Ian had impure thoughts about his sister, he believed Camellia was still young. Moreover, he didn't tell Ian the truth so that he could propose. Actually, Ian also knew that Kieran had confessed everything to him just to ease his own conscience, because Kieran was also responsible for keeping Camellia trapped in this cage. Kieran didn't deny this. To atone, he wanted to give Camellia freedom, to help her go where she wanted and live the life she desired. But marrying into the Heir royal family, though it sounded glorious, would strip her of her freedom the moment she returned to being a woman. He criticized Ian, saying it would only put Camellia in a difficult position. Ian refuted his concerns, arguing that at least it would save her life. You don't naively think that the Marchioness will spare her, do you? If you really think so, I'm too disappointed in you, Kieran, and I will try to ensure she has ample freedom with me. Although you'll think I'm being arbitrary, this is my way of loving her. Kieran thought he was completely insane, but what he didn't know was, there was someone even crazier than Ian, and he was right before his eyes. That was Lord Claude. After a series of inner struggles, Claude finally stopped avoiding his feelings. He didn't care about Camellia's gender gender, he simply fell in love with this person. On the day of Kieran's engagement ceremony, Camelia was told she was not allowed to attend, so she hid in the library alone and took out a letter from her pocket, which was handed to her by someone a few days ago. The letter mentioned Laura had a lost daughter who was Marquis Bale's illegitimate daughter. Shall we meet? But recently, Louvre was heavily guarded, and the engagement banquet would end in a week. So Camelia planned to enter Louvre to find her mother after the engagement banquet ended. Hey, so you're here, Camillus. Claude, who should have been attending the engagement ceremony, also appeared in the library. Because he saw Camelia on his way to the palace and followed her, Claude asked her why she wasn't attending the engagement ceremony. She made an excuse that she wasn't feeling well. He puzzledly asked why she came to the library instead of seeing a doctor if she wasn't feeling well. Seeing her flushed cheeks, he worriedly touched her forehead, suspecting she had a fever. Camelia refused his suggestions to go to the hospital or the palace. Her awkward and guilty look made Claude immediately realize something was amiss. Therefore, Claude also decided not to attend the engagement ceremony. He then obviously lay down on the sofa and declared that he preferred staying in the library with her rather than attending the boring engagement ceremony. Camelia scolded him for not attending, saying her brother would definitely be sad in that case. But Claude disagreed, believing no one would notice his absence. She thought he was acting like a willful child at this moment and said people would see him as irresponsible if he continued like this. However, Claude just lowered his head and said sadly, "My father is injured, so I've been thinking about what I should do first if I become a duke. I must first gather people who can be useful to me. I will keep them by my side and then expand the territory." In fact, Claude had once proposed that Camelia become the steward of the house of Bale and Krozderk, but she couldn't understand why he would choose her. After all, she was just Kieran's shadow. Claude invited her again, but was still rejected by Camelia because she had her own plans, which was to become a teacher and educate children. Claude reminded her that there were also children who needed education in his family, and they were the children she personally asked him to take in. It referred to the thing that Camelia had previously asked him to take in 2 children from Louvre, but she hadn't visited them once after he took them in. Hearing his words, Camelia was incredulous yet overjoyed, marveling that he was truly a kind person, fulfilling what she had merely mentioned in passing. Just as she was about to say something more, an uninvited guest barged in. It was Marilyn, who came here to look for Claude. Hearing the noise, Claude immediately pulled Camelia into his embrace and complained, "It is so annoying, just stay like this for a while." Camelia questioned whether it would prevent them from being discovered. He explained that at least this way they wouldn't discover her, and if Marilyn believed he was with someone else, maybe she wouldn't be so interested in him. "Then I'll pull you into my arms, don't be scared." As soon as he finished speaking, Camelia was tightly embraced by him. At this moment, the librarian and Marilyn had already come before them, and Claude gave them an annoyed glare. To an uninformed observer, it appeared Claude was having a secret rendezvous with a lover. As he expected, Marilyn was angered and left the scene. Bearing the title of his fiancée, she couldn't tolerate such an insult, but due to her status, she didn't dare make a scene. Camelia, feeling relieved, felt somewhat guilty, believing Claude only needed to let Marilyn see him with someone else, and didn't need to hurt her like that. Then she asked Claude to move aside, urging him to quickly attend the engagement ceremony. The next second, her chin was grasped by Claude, forcing her to look at him. Claude bluntly asked, "If Marilyn likes me, then what about me? Who do I like?" This question instantly made the atmosphere ambiguous. Seeing she didn't answer, he didn't press her. Then he asked her to follow him, and led her to a secret room, where not only could she freely observe the engagement ceremony from here, but she also wouldn't be disturbed by irrelevant personnel. Camelia uncertainly asked if she could really stay in this place. Claude firmly told her, "Wherever I am, there's nowhere you can't go." His statement felt like an indirect confession, making her heart race. Afterward, Claude went to the ceremony venue. He told Kieran he had prepared an engagement gift for him and asked him to look up. Kieran puzzledly looked up and saw Camelia waving and smiling at him. Seeing her coming, Kieran smiled contentedly, because this was the best gift he had received today. Time quickly turned to evening. Marilyn was again looking for Claude. She wanted to apologize for what happened during the day. She had originally thought that a noble of Claude's high status would be different, but now it seemed he was like other men, possibly having a secret lover. At this time, fireworks burst in the sky. Looking up, Marilyn was shocked to find Camelia, who had disappeared all day, was actually here. Recalling the scenes she saw during the day, the person in Claude's arms had golden hair. At this moment, she finally realized that she had been deceived by them. Meanwhile, Claude brought some food for Camelia. Camelia praised the delicious food, saying they were completely different from what she ate at home. Claude commented that was because her family's chef wasn't skilled. Seeing sauce on the corner of her mouth, he felt an impulse to wipe it off for her, but his rationality told him this wasn't appropriate. So he got up to get Camelia something to drink. Camelia expressed confusion at his behavior. Suddenly, she noticed toys nearby. Remembering Claude said it was a place he often came to as a child, she picked up a wooden horse, imagining young Claude holding the wooden horse with a proud face. He must have been very cute. Just then, the door suddenly opened. She thought it was Claude returning with drinks, but turned to face Marilyn's angry expression. After confirming it was Camelia, Marilyn questioned what she was doing here. Meanwhile, Claude was walking back with wine, but was stopped by Ian at the stairs, who was looking for Camelia. He had been detained by the Emperor before, because half of the neutral territory containing diamonds belonged to him. He told Claude the Emperor said he would sign a peace treaty and give him operating rights. Saying this, he realized he had been tricked into revealing information. Remembering his purpose was to find Camelia, he directly asked Claude where she was. But Claude said he didn't know, telling him to find her himself. As soon as he finished speaking, Camelia's voice came from upstairs, followed by Marilyn's angry shout. Hearing this, they rushed to the second floor. Marilyn questioned questioned Camelia if she was the person who was with Claude in the library that day. Knowing she was discovered, Camelia widened her eyes, turning her head away guiltily to deny, claiming she had been here the whole time, but her lie was seen through by the sharp-eyed Marilyn. Marilyn had always felt something was strange. She thought that no matter how pretty a man was, he was still a man. But ever since Camelia's appeared, everything became very strange. His pretty face even made her believe Camelia was a girl. Camelia tried to calm Marilyn down, but Marilyn demanded Camelia prove it to her. Instinctively, Camelia fearfully backed away, but was then grabbed by the collar by Marilyn, who had no intention of letting her go. "You come and prove to me that I'm stupidly misunderstanding you." Due to the struggle, a button from Camelia's chest fell to the ground. Their tussle caused both to fall onto the bed. Camelia said she knew what Marilyn was misunderstanding and promised that what she feared wouldn't happen. But Marilyn didn't respond, only coldly asking her to let go. Realizing the impropriety, Camelia hurriedly stood up, still wanting to explain she didn't mean it. But before she could finish, she received a slap from Marilyn. Marilyn scolded her for being too rude, treating a lady like that. At this moment, she discovered Camelia's secret, but she knew as long as she remained Camelia's bail, she could only be a man for the rest of her life. Marilyn, seemingly not reassured, warned again, "You're a man now, don't be too greedy." Claude pushed open the door to see the scene. He sternly questioned what was going on. Marilyn explained that she had misunderstood Camelia, telling him not to be so harsh on Camelia. Then she explained, "I just wanted to confirm whether Camelius was really a man. It was my rudeness first. She misunderstood my intention, so she became too agitated and pressed me onto the bed." Claude swept over Marilyn with his scrutinizing gaze. Then he fixed on Camelia. Noticing the slap mark on her face, he asked Marilyn why she had hit her. Although these words came from concern for Camelia, they tasted different to Marilyn. She touched her hand with a blushing face, saying it was okay, asking Claude not to worry. But Claude didn't see it that way. He believed that since harm was done, there should be a price to pay. "You dared to touch my person. You must pay a painful price." In fact, it was Marilyn who he wanted to punish, and those closely involved couldn't see clearly, thinking it was Camelia. Ian, who had been silent all along, finally couldn't bear it anymore. He asked Claude if he believed what Marilyn said. Ian warned that in Heir, the punishment for false accusations was very severe, including cutting off the tongue, chopping off both hands, and prohibiting going out for 3 years. Unfortunately, the Empire didn't have such laws. His blatant threat scared Marilyn. She turned and took a deep look at Camelia, thinking that if she wanted to defend herself, Camelia could testify for her. After all, the cause of the incident was Camelia. She was confident Camelia wouldn't expose the truth of her female disguise, so she made an excuse that her wrist hurt and needed to see a doctor, quickly leaving. Looking at Marilyn, who slipped away, Ian just felt speechless. But in the blink of an eye, he was locked outside the door. At this moment, he felt like killing someone. Just then, his subordinate came to report, saying the second prince's men had made a move. In the room, only Claude and Camelia remained. Camelia clenched her fist, feeling very wronged. "It's my offense, I'm sorry, but I absolutely never thought of touching your fiancé." Before she could finish, Claude interrupted, "Do you like Marilyn?" Camelia was shocked and embarrassed. Looking up to see his hurt expression, "You are no different from the others. Just another man cannot resist a woman's charm." Camelia hurriedly denied, explaining it was just a mistake. Unconsciously, she was cornered by Claude. She continued to explain that she really hadn't done anything improper with Marilyn and asking for his forgiveness. Seeing she still hadn't defended herself at all, Claude's eye twitched. He gently lifted her reddened face and said softly, "She hit you. You don't need to apologize. And I'm about to do something that does require an apology. Camelia, whether you're a woman or a man, it doesn't matter now." As soon as he finished speaking, his kiss fell on his lips. The sudden change startled Camelia with widened eyes, but soon she closed her eyes and enjoyed the kiss. Her hands on his chest also unconsciously tightened. After what seemed like forever, Claude reluctantly let go of Camelia, but the expected happy scene didn't happen. What greeted him was Camelia in tears asking, "Claude, do you prefer men or women?" Her question struck deep into his heart. Just as he was about to explain, an urgent knock came at the door. The person outside anxiously asked, "Lord Claude, are you here?" Claude impatiently asked what matter he had, only to hear the messenger report that his father was critically ill. Meanwhile, Duke Heir was coughing up blood. The doctor diagnosed it as poisoned tea. Claude rushed there. As soon as he entered, he was summoned by his father. He tightly held his father's hand, his voice trembling as he asked, "Father, how were you poisoned? What happened?" Duke Heir weakly said, "Fortunately, you're here, Claude. You are now the Duke Claude Heir. From this day forth, you are the master of Delcasa." As Duke Heir was critically poisoned, the people from Heir in the Empire immediately became the primary suspects, and Prince Ian of Heir, who remained in the Empire, was in a very dangerous situation. He hadn't expected his brother to be so foolish. Whether the poisoning was his brother's order or not, it must be related to his brother, and now he had to return to his country immediately. The only person he was concerned about was Camelia. From this moment on, many thorny issues would arise. So he planned to take her back with him, but he was stopped by Kieran. He protected Camelia behind him, warning Ian to hide quickly before war broke out because his identity was too sensitive. Extremely reluctant, Ian had to leave despite his unwillingness. He gently took her hand, knelt down, and kissed her hand. "I will come for you. Wait for me, Camelia." His gaze towards her was calm and determined. After doing all this, he hurriedly left. Camelia softly asked her brother, "Everything will be all right, won't it?" Shortly after, Claude found the real culprit behind the poisoning. It was Marquis Selby. The Emperor looked incredulous because Marquis Selby had no reason to do so. Although the Selby family wasn't as prominent as the Heir and Bale families, they'd always been loyal to the Empire and the Emperor. The Emperor puzzledly asked, why would he collaborate with Heir to kill the Duke Heir? Weren't you engaged to his daughter? Hearing him mention this, Claude darkened his own eyes and explained, the Selby family is responsible for all the tea tributes to the royal family, and Marquis Selby himself is very sensitive about the supply, so he manages it thoroughly. The tea my father drank was also sent by him. Perhaps they didn't intend to harm the Heir family but the royal family, and we've overlooked Prince Ian. Thinking of the scene he just witnessed, Kieran telling Ian to leave quickly, he couldn't help but wonder if Kieran and Ian were also in cahoots. Then he mentioned the bodyguard they caught, but the man bit his tongue and committed suicide. Your Majesty, I plan to take this opportunity to reclaim ownership of the neutral territory, so please permit me to go to war with Heir. Meanwhile, Camelia anxiously inquired about Claude's situation and Ian's whereabouts, wanting to know if the murder was really committed by Heir. Kieran answered it wasn't certain yet, but affirmed Ian was definitely not the murderer, and he solemnly told Camelia that Duke Heir probably wouldn't survive the day. Hearing this, her heart sank. She was very worried about Claude. Seeing her concerned expression, Kieran pondered that she and Claude seemed to truly have feelings for each other. He recalled an incident from 2 years ago. Snow was falling that day. It was a common occurrence. Yet Claude interestingly mentioned, I remember something. What taste did he experience in the snow? He was referring to Camelia. Kieran was about to inquire about the relationship between Camelia and Claude when he was interrupted by a sudden call. Camelius, you are such a disappointment. I had expressly ordered you not to attend the engagement ceremony, yet you dared to ignore my command. Seeing her fierce demeanor, Kieran protected Camelia behind him, stating that Duke Heir was critically ill and the matter could be discussed later. But Anastasia had no intention of letting it go. She sharply said, Kieran has been led astray by you. You're truly remarkable, Camelius. The usually good-tempered Kieran finally lost his patience. Mother, please stop. Seeing her son defy her for the first time, Anastasia trembled with anger. Kieran told Camelia to return to where she was before and wait for him. As soon as Camelia left, Anastasia accused Kieran of siding with outsiders, not even respecting his own mother. Hearing this, Kieran emanated a cold aura. The chill in his eyes seemed capable of freezing someone. That day I was abandoned by the cold lake. Was it really Laura's fault? Having what she thought was a flawless secret exposed, Anastasia was thunderstruck, frozen in place for a long time. She suppressed her guilt and tried to remain calm. Kieran, what do you mean? Kieran coldly answered, what I mean, mother should know best. That night, Claude dragged his exhausted body to find Camelia. Only with her could he find some comfort. The next day, the beloved Duke Heir passed away. The master of Del Casa overnight became Claude. A sorrowful atmosphere enveloped the entire empire. People discussed that there would be a bloody storm. Camelia thought this time when Claude left the capital, it meant they wouldn't be able to see each other for a long time. At this moment, Camelia noticed a familiar figure downstairs. It was the shop owner who had measured her for clothes. Also the only person in the palace who knew her true identity. She wondered what Frank was doing here at this time. After a simple greeting, Frank stated his purpose. It's not easy to live here as a noble, is it? His words made Camelia feel an uneasy premonition. The next second, he took out an envelope from his pocket, which reminded her of the kidnapper's letter. Frank explained, there was no response to the last letter, so I came again. She hadn't expected he was with the kidnappers. The letter contained a map, indicating her mother's whereabouts. Frank warned that it was dangerous there. If Camelia wasn't prepared, it would be best not to go rashly. He advised her to be psychologically prepared before opening the letter. He also revealed that Marquis Vale was also looking for Laura. This news shocked Camelia greatly. Before she could recover from the shock, Frank calmly spoke. Last time I kept your secret, it's your turn to keep mine this time. I trust you. After this, she went to find her father. I heard you're going to war. The Marquis said he wanted to campaign with the Duke. Losing his old friend Duke Heir made him so angry that he couldn't sleep. After hesitation, Camelia finally gathered courage. Father, I want to end my life as Camelius Vale. Marquis Vale was very shocked about her words. Have you found Laura? His question directly confirmed what Frank said. Camelia never understood how her mother could abandon her brother by the cold lake, but her father didn't directly answer her question, only saying Laura was very good at hide and seek as a child. It confused Camelia even more. She had always thought her mother was just a maid at the manor, and she had never heard that her father and mother knew each other since childhood. But her father had no intention of answering her questions. Instead, he hastily dismissed her. However, one wave had not settled before another arose. On her way back, the butler informed her of Prince Ian's proposal. She finally understood what Ian meant before he left. The steward explained, the master is very afraid you'd say you want to go to Heir. The Heir royal family is very paranoid and cruel, although Princess Ian is the benefactor of Lord Kieran. But he is also from Heir. As a butler, I shouldn't comment on the master's social relationships, but they are bloodthirsty, absolutely not to be trusted lightly. So please don't choose to go to Heir for temporary peace. On the way back to her room, Camelia's mind was in chaos. She wasn't sure if what Ian said was out of sincereness. If war broke out, they probably wouldn't be able to see each other again. Troublesome matters came one after another. Exhausted, she had just pushed open her bedroom door when she saw Claude was inside. You always come back so late. Hello, Camelius. Long time no see. Seeing his coming, she was very surprised. Why are you here? Aren't you supposed to go to the Northern Territory? Claude came to say goodbye. I must tell you something before I leave. Camelia nervously swallowed, because she guessed he must want to talk about that day. Thinking of this, her heart raced even more nervously. But contrary to her expectations, Claude said, Camelius, I came to apologize apologize to you. In the attic, out of curiosity and impulse, I did something I shouldn't have done to you. Camelia was deeply engulfed by anxiety. She lowered her head with tightly clenched fists, saying she didn't understand what he meant. I'm sorry, I was rude and impolite that day. Please forget it. So she had been deluding herself all along. She instantly choked up. Tears welled in her eyes. At this moment, Claude touched her forehead, asking if she wasn't feeling well. When their eyes met, her heart was filled with mixed emotions. She slapped away the hand on her forehead, stating she was just a bit hot, not unwell. I want to rest now. Please leave, Your Grace. Since everything was just a misunderstanding, it was time for her to let go. Claude, who was pushed out, stared at her back, lost in thought for a long time. He found he really couldn't read her anymore. Back in the carriage, the more he thought, the more something felt off. That day, after he kissed Camelia, she cried. He had wanted to tell Camelia that he didn't like men, but her as a person. But if Camelia liked women, if she was afraid of him, then apologizing for his uncontrollable action was correct. But he couldn't understand why Camelia looked like she was about to cry after his apology. There were still 2 hours before departure, so he had plenty of time to clear up his doubts. He returned again to find Camelia, but Pippi said Camelia had taken medicine and was asleep, so he planned to just take a look and leave. Little did he know that this one look would completely change their fate, considering that they wouldn't be able to see each other for the next few years. Claude was wondering if she would miss him. At this moment, she mumbled and turned over, muttering, "Chot." This scene made Claude sigh. You really made me worry. The next second, his smile froze. An unnatural blush quickly crept up his cheeks, because he saw that patch of whiteness beneath her collar. For a long time, he stood by the bed like a wooden block, unable to move. When he came to his senses, he was so surprised he couldn't close his mouth. He hadn't expected Camelia to actually be a woman. He muttered to himself, so Kieran had me foolish from the very beginning. Before leaving, he left the clematis brooch, a symbol of the Duchess, on the bedside table. It was a token signifying he had pledged his life. When the war was won, he would return to help Camelia get her name back, reclaim her life, and completely possess her. Meanwhile, Camelia also discovered the brooch. She thought Claude had accidentally left it behind, but she had already decided to look for her mother once she recovered. After seeing her mother, she might leave immediately, so she probably wouldn't be able to give this brooch to Claude in person, because she had decided to become Camelia. Upon discovering Camelia's true identity, Claude directly confronted the culprit Kieran, tentatively saying Camelia and asking him to protect her. Unexpectedly, he had guessed the real name of Camelia, which left Kieran frozen in shock. Claude warned him with a serious expression, "If anything happens to Camelia, I will never forgive you. You must protect her well, don't let her be harmed. This is the price you pay for deceiving me." Kieran bailed. Early the next morning, the proud Marilyn knelt before Princess Rosina. It was discovered that Duke Ihar's death was caused by her father. Not understanding the situation, she begged Rosina to give her a chance to prove her father's innocence. Her request put Princess Rosina in an awkward position, as she could do nothing about this matter. But she consoled Marilyn. If Marquis Selby is innocent, then there shouldn't be a problem. Marilyn was clearly dissatisfied with her response, so she fabricated a lie. "Your Highness, do you know? Your fiancé's brother Camillus molested me on your engagement day. Lord Claude also saw it. If the Emperor learns of this, I fear he will be disappointed with the Bale family." Hearing this, Rosina immediately panicked. To avoid affecting her marriage with Kieran, she promised Marilyn she would help her seek opportunity of clarification from the Emperor. But Rosina also warned her to keep her mouth shut until then. Later, Rosina found Kieran to discuss countermeasures. "You mean my brother Camillus molested Lady Marilyn?" Rosina answered, "Yes, that's what Marilyn said. If that's true, it would severely damage the reputation of your family, and our marriage could also be affected." Unlike her worried expression, Kieran let out a long sigh of relief. "I can't speak for others, but Camillus would absolutely never do such a thing." As for Marilyn saying Claude witnessed the situation, that's impossible. Because if my brother wanted to molest Lady Marilyn, Claude wouldn't just stand by. When I go to the neutral territory to send off my father, I'll ask Claude to write a letter, which should prove my brother's innocence. Hearing this, Rosina finally smiled again. If Claude could provide testimony, she would have a basis for judgment. The next day, the group boarded the train to the neutral territory. To make certain people happy, Kieran even brought Camelia along. Camelia was quite excited because it was her first time to leave Heir, but the sudden teasing startled her. "Are you that happy? It's because of Claude, right?" Seeing Camelia flustered, he was in good spirits. But thinking of the 2 men who had their eyes on his sister, he felt somewhat sad. Because he wasn't satisfied with either of them, neither was worthy of his sister. As for Camelia, she wasn't as calm as she appeared. This was their first meeting since their last parting. She didn't even know what to say when they met. After returning, she would go look for her mother, which might truly be their last meeting. At least she could say a final goodbye to him. At this moment, she didn't know all her worries were in vain. The investigation showed that Marquis Selby planned to fake preventing a poisoning to curry favor with the royal family, and then pin the blame on Prince Ian, thus using this to swallow the resource-rich neutral territory. But the poisoned tea was mistakenly drunk by Duke Ihar, which directly caused his death. The second prince, Aaron Sergio, whose scheme failed miserably, not only was his subordinate caught exposing his identity, but he also offended Claude, the master of Del Casa. Regarding this matter, Ian also indicated he wouldn't let it go. If he chose to support the crown prince, this war would determine who would be the next king of Gyore. That meant Ian and they had a common enemy. Kieran had already thought of this, so he had written a letter early on, proposing an alliance with Ian. Hearing this, Wade fell into deep thought. Just then, the carriage arrived at the battlefield. The war had caused many injuries. Camelia couldn't help but worry about Claude. Learning from Kieran that Claude had been grazed by a bullet and was receiving treatment, she instantly became extremely anxious. However, she also worried that Claude disliked her. Do you know the meaning of the Heir coat of arms? Kieran asked. The eagle symbolizes Duke Heir, and the clematis symbolizes the Duchess, so that clematis brooch belongs to the Duchess. Camelia touched her forehead. But that brooch was left in my room by Lord Claude. If I had known it was so important, I would have brought it. Kieran thought that it clearly different from what Claude said, who clearly said he left it for Camelia intentionally. So she actually didn't know anything about it. Camelia looked up and asked him what if Claude was angry with her. Kieran encouraged, how could that be possible? Go in and see him. Camelia moved her steps timidly. Suddenly, the voice she had been thinking of day and night sounded. It must be the crown prince who has arrived. He makes quite a scene. Tell him I'm resting. The next second, Camelia's voice woke him up. Your Grace, you left the clematis brooch in my room. I didn't know it was so important, so I didn't bring it. If I had known, I definitely would have brought it. I'm really sorry. Her voice grew increasingly smaller as Claude moved closer to her. The next moment, his hand encircled her waist. His face was just inches away. He so missed her that he couldn't wait to answer her question and just wanted to fully savor her sweetness. After quite some time, Camelia pushed him away with a red face. You're injured. You shouldn't move like this. But Claude didn't care at all, just reached out his hand for her to come. Seeing her hesitation, he guessed her concern. You want to say you're a man? Yes. And you said this behavior was unreasonable last time. You told me to forget it and you even apologized to me. Have you started to like men? As she finished speaking, Claude had already come to her side. No, I like you. The sudden confession shocked her immensely, her heart pounding uncontrollably. Her remaining rationality forced her to avoid his gaze, asking if he liked men. His response was firm and resolute. I said I like you. Come here, Camelius. Hearing her refusal, Claude gently took her hand. Please, don't stay away from me. Seeing that Camelia was frightened by his behavior, Claude promised not to do anything she disliked again. His pitiful look made her heart race. She stammered a response, I know. Please lie down. It's a gunshot wound after all. Be careful, haven't you been to see the doctor yet? The next second, her hand was caught by Claude again. She was pulled to sit beside him. Claude explained, it's wartime now, I can go for treatment later. I just want to be with you right now. Hearing his words, Camelia asked if he wasn't afraid of war. Claude admitted he was also scared about the war, but it was his only way to get revenge. And besides, he wasn't just seeking revenge. For a long time, Del Casa had sacrificed many people due to the war in the neutral territory. So he wanted to establish a safe Del Casa that no one could violate. Camelia stared at his abdominal wound and asked if he was willing to sacrifice his life. Hearing this, Claude suddenly smiled. No, my life is precious. I can't sacrifice it. Only one person can make me sacrifice my life. You must have had a tough journey, right? Camelia replied it was fine, except not being able to bathe was a bit troublesome. Mentioning this, she realized she was dirty and immediately jumped up like a spring, planning to leave first. But as she was about to leave, Claude firmly stopped her. Camelia stuttered for him to lie down and rest. At that moment, news of the Crown Prince's arrival spread. His displeasure was evident. When the group arrived at the tent, they saw the resentful face of Claude. Camelia felt so awkward that she didn't want to stay a second longer. She respectfully bowed and was about to leave, but was called back by Claude. Ivan, take Camelius to the hot spring. And he turned to Camelia with a gentle voice saying she would like it. Ivan introduced that the neutral territory was an interesting place when they raided for the hot spring, where some areas had eternal snow, some had hot springs. He told Camelia that his grace had ordered no one to enter the hot spring, so she could bathe with peace of mind. Claude's thoughtful gestures stirred ripples in her heart. Even though he had left so coldly that day, today he was being so gentle to her. How could she hate him? Does his grace really like men, or does he just like me? If he really likes men, he should abandon me as a woman, right? But he said he just likes me. If that's true, that would be great. Under the enchanting moonlight, Camelia finally understood her feelings. She had been in love with Claude all along. As long as he liked her, she didn't care about anything else. When she returned to the camp, the hot spring ban was finally lifted. The soldiers could finally bathe. That night, Camelia thought about many things. Even if Claude didn't like her, it wouldn't matter. She liked him. But with her illegitimate birth and her disguise as a man, could she really like him? Lady Bale said she would hold a funeral for her to restore her female identity. Thinking about it, Camelia knew her days as Camelius were numbered. Moreover, after meeting her mother, she would have to leave. It could be her last meeting with Claude. If that was the case, if this was really their last meeting, then could she confess her feelings to him? Could she do what she wanted to do just once? Meanwhile, Claude was also searching everywhere for Camelia. Finally, he found her asleep in the carriage. Claude thought she felt unsafe staying in the camp. Suddenly, he was surprised to discover Camelia hadn't locked the carriage door. He thought she usually seemed quite smart, but sometimes she was also quite careless. With a smile, he stroked her golden hair and said softly, Camelia, may I kiss you? If you don't wake up, I'm going to kiss you. Still in her sweet dream, Camelia unconsciously mumbled, no, Ian. Hearing this name, Claude felt his heart being cut like a knife. He understood. So Ian Sergio also knew early on that she was a woman. Only he had been kept in the dark. Looking back now, Ian seemed to have known from the beginning. But how did he know? Did Kieran tell him? Or did Camelia slip up? More importantly, Ian knew Camelia was a woman yet still lived with her. Thinking of these things, he gritted his teeth, barely suppressing his anger. Until the next day when dawn broke, Camelia finally woke up slowly. The first thing she saw was Claude's handsome face. Her direct gaze lingered for a long time. During this time, she had a bold idea. In fact, she really did put it into action. She leaned toward Claude and gently brushed his hair away. Unexpectedly, this action woke him up. Seeing this, Camelia didn't retreat. Instead, she became even bolder and touched his ear. The innocent Claude immediately blushed. Sneaking up on a duke in his sleep? You have more courage than most men. Afterwards, Claude walked out of the carriage. He wanted to take Camelia somewhere, because he had some things he wanted wanted to confirm before leaving. Camellia anxiously asked if they could really go that far. Claude confidently stated that no one would dare say anything. Then they arrived at their destination. Claude looked into the distance. Camelius, can you see over there? That's where Ian Sergio is, and he can see our side from there. Hearing this, Camellia tilted her head and asked if Ian was really there. As soon as the words left her mouth, she fell into a solid embrace, his chin resting on her shoulder as he asked in a low voice, "Do you miss him?" His sudden questioning made her somewhat awkward. She stammered, asking why he always asked such things. Claude pressed further, asking if she had ever slept in the same room with Ian when they lived together. She hurriedly denied it and stated they each had their own rooms. "Have you ever caressed his hair like you just did to me?" I've never done anything like that to him." "Have you kissed?" His successive questioning made Camellia feel irritated. She pushed Claude away, asking why he always asked such things. Seeing his obviously unnatural expression, she finally realized he was jealous. But Claude persisted in asking if they had ever kissed. Only after hearing her definite denial did he finally show a satisfied smile. Then he unexpectedly kissed Camellia. Thinking about how this wasn't far from Ian's camp, he felt secretly pleased. After the kiss, he held Camellia tightly. "Be careful when I'm not around, don't get hurt, and don't sleep in unlocked places." Hearing these instructions, Camellia smiled brightly, nodding in agreement. Then Claude mentioned the brooch. Camellia guiltily looked away. "Keep it until I return. I will come back to get it personally. Don't disappear." That was what Camellia most wanted to hear, but after hearing it, she couldn't make any reply, because she wasn't a man nor a noble, and the image he saw of her was all fake. If he knew her true identity, he would change his mind. But her rationality told her she should now say her final goodbye. "Well, I will definitely wait for you." Although she knew she shouldn't make such a promise, she couldn't control her feelings. She wanted to cherish this feeling he gave her. Even if it was brief, she wanted to see his warm smile once more. After Camellia briefly said goodbye to her father, Claude appeared leading a horse. He first handed over a letter asking Kieran to pass it to Princess Rosina. "Don't tell Camellia about the other things. I want to tell her myself when I return. She still believes I'm completely in the dark." After these instructions, he called Camellia over. "This is my father's horse. His name is Eli. I'm entrusting him to you." Seeing their confused expressions, he added, for you to take care of him. If anything happens, you can ride him to Del Casa. He can return from anywhere." After saying this, Claude turned and left, not looking back. In war, can promises of meeting again really be made? What if Claude dies in the war? Will I regret it? Thinking of this, Camellia started running. Since this was their last meeting anyway, even if her feelings were never acknowledged from the start, she wanted to express them now. She called out to Claude, "Wait, come closer. I like you too. I won't say it a second time, so you must come back alive. Although injuries are inevitable, you must return." Her sudden confession shocked Claude immensely. For a moment, he couldn't believe his ears. His heart pounded like thunder. Then he gently pulled away her tie. "All right, I promise you, but you must also promise me that after the war ends, you'll stand at the front during my victory ceremony. I'll take this as a token." Now we each have our tokens. Afterwards, Camellia respectfully bowed goodbye. Claude watched her leave, his eyes full of fascination. "She said she likes me. That's wonderful. No matter what happens, I must return to see her." After they returned to the capital, Rosina convened a meeting regarding Marilyn's accusation that Camellia had molested her. Since the only people who knew about this were Marilyn and Camellia, and Marilyn was certain Camellia wouldn't expose her gender to accuse her of slander. But unexpectedly, Kieran had obtained evidence from Claude proving her false accusation. In the letter wrote that Claude had heard Camellia and Marilyn's conversation in the hallway. Combined with the torn collar and the content of their conversation, it could be inferred that Camellia was innocent. Besides this, Claude had sent another gift. He also sent back evidence of the involvement of Marquise Selby in the conspiracy. Hearing this, Marilyn was shocked. She suddenly stood up and argued that her father would absolutely never participate in rebellion. But Rosina remembered clearly how she had previously cried about her grievances and attacked the Bale family. She had warned her at that time that false accusations were a serious crime. At this point, Rosina didn't want to hear any more of her excuses and ordered the guards to take Marilyn out. Marilyn shouted angrily and unwillingly throughout the Great Hall, "Your Highness, you can't do this. It's you who deceived Claude, you shameless slut. You're still pretending to be a man. If it weren't for you, Claude wouldn't treat me and my father like this. It's all your fault. My father did nothing wrong. Why is Claude on your side? Do you think you can become the owner of the brooch? Your Highness, please give me one more chance." As the doors closed tightly, the proud Marilyn left behind just one red high heel. However, as one wave subsided, another began. Rosina asked if they knew who the owner of the brooch was. Hearing this, the siblings were both startled. The direct gaze of Rosina made Kieran's heart skip a beat. Fortunately, Camellia stepped in to help him. "Your Highness, the brooch is with me. I think His Grace dropped it accidentally. He said he would come back to get it." But Rosina noticed what she said clearly contradicted the letter's content, which stated Claude had already found the brooch's owner. That is, the owner was Camellia. Rosina continued pointing out that Camellia had also returned writing Eli, so she guessed Claude had really chosen Camellia as the brooch's owner. But if so, their marriage would face problems again. To avoid putting her brother in a difficult position, Camellia made a shocking decision. "Your Highness, Lady Selby is your friend. First, I want to thank you for choosing to believe me in this matter. I won't let you and my brother worry about it anymore." At the critical moment, Kieran suddenly stood up, wanting to stop Leon from exposing herself, but Rosina said she wanted to hear Camellia finish. "Brother, don't worry. I never had any improper thoughts toward Lady Selby, and I'm not a man but a woman. I know this will shock you, but I feel I shouldn't let my brother lie to you anymore, and I don't want you to have any misunderstandings about His Grace. But he doesn't know I'm a woman. I just want to tell you that what you're worried about won't happen, so please don't worry too much." As soon as she finished speaking, Rosina suddenly suddenly stood up. Instead of blaming Camellia, she gently embraced her, patting her shoulder to make her relax. She understood that noble families all had their special circumstances. You've suffered a lot during these periods. It was the first time that someone understood her grievances. Thus, Camellia instantly burst into tears. This confession made her feel much better. She tactfully wanted to withdraw, leaving the engaged couple some private space. Before leaving, she didn't forget to give them her blessing. You two really suit each other. You look like you're truly in love. If you get married, you'll definitely be happier than anyone. Hearing these words, Kieran and Rosina both smiled happily. After Camellia left, Kieran explained everything in detail. In this way, Rosina could better help Camellia in the future. He also informed her that Camellia still didn't know her identity had been exposed to Claude. Rosina assured him to confidently entrust Camellia to her. She would guide Camellia well, making her meet the royal standards as the future Duchess Heir when Claude returned. She also praised Camellia having an outstanding appearance and would look absolutely beautiful in a formal dress. Meanwhile, Camellia planned to leave without saying goodbye to find her birth mother. As she was immersed in the sweet fantasy of reuniting with her mother, the sound of a carriage came from behind. Anastasia, who had raised her, had come after her. Her escape plan thus came to an abrupt end. Anastasia was furious that Camellia had ignored her warnings. As soon as she got out of the carriage, she gave her a resounding slap. "You dare to disregard the kindness of being raised and betray me. If I had known you were so selfish, I should have let you starve to death in that filthy gutter." But she seemed to forget that Camellia had never wished for her to do so. Her entry into the House of Vale was entirely Anastasia's one-sided decision. But Anastasia would never admit her own mistakes, instead continuing to blame Camellia. "If you didn't have such thoughts, would you become such close friends with Claude that you call each other by name? If you were planning to leave secretly, you should have followed my warning and lived quietly before. Even Claude and Princess Rosina are asking about you. Under these circumstances, if you suddenly disappeared, what would others think? Have you considered what harm this would bring to the family?" Camellia responded in despair. "You're right, Lady Vale. Who would remember someone like me for long? Now, because of the war, the domestic situation is chaotic. His Grace and Princess will soon forget me. Shouldn't you be happy that your major concern is resolved?" But what Camellia didn't know was that the Marquis had personally instructed Anastasia to take good care of her before his return. Claude had also instructed Kieran to protect her well. If they couldn't keep their promises, both Anastasia and Kieran would be in awkward positions, and Camellia knew nothing of these instructions. Anastasia scolded. "I've told you before that you've already entered noble society. If you just disappear like this, it would damage the family's interests. I heard you're very clever. Can't you consider even this basic principle?" Camellia stubbornly replied that she didn't care about that now. Kieran had recovered his health, and the Vale family wouldn't be shaken by such matters. Seeing her so obstinate, Anastasia sighed deeply. Her expression turned cold. "You really don't understand what I said. The address on your note is Laura's, right?" Hearing this, Camellia immediately hid the note behind her back, but Anastasia just coldly smiled and told her not to bother hiding it. She never intended to take it, because she already knew where Laura was. Her words made Camellia feel that an uneasy feeling instantly sweeping through her. As she expected, she received a threat from Anastasia. "If you want to go so badly, then go ahead. Just remember to hide well. No matter where you hide, I will find you both, then kill your mother, making sure you can never return." She couldn't believe Lady Vale would say such vicious words, and frightened, she immediately pushed her away. Anastasia laughed triumphantly. "You'd better do as I say, that way your mother can remain safe and sound. And have you thought about whether Laura really wants to see you? Your mother seems to have forgotten you and is living well. If you suddenly appear, you might just give her a headache, so stop being foolish and do as I say. After your father returns, we'll hold the funeral. Then you can go live somewhere where no one knows you. If you obey me well, I won't harm Laura in the slightest." Anastasia was convinced her threat would work. In her view, Camellia's attempt to defy her was simply overestimating herself. Without Camellia and her mother, Kieran wouldn't blame her, and the Marquis wouldn't betray her. Yet Camellia wanted to return to her mother's side and live happily. No way! She would make her know how it feels, and let her experience what it's like to be betrayed by someone you love, and feel what bone-deep loneliness and betrayal are like. Time flies. 3 years later, Camellia once again wore women's clothes. Her beautiful golden hair reached her waist. Looking at her masterpiece, Rosina exclaimed. Camellia, restored to her female identity, was truly too adorable. But Camellia herself felt quite awkward. Although Rosina strongly recommended she wear women's clothes daily to get used to it, she still felt that occasionally dressing like this was satisfying enough for her. Rosina encouraged, "Just try it. Once you get used to it, you might want to live differently. More importantly, you're so beautiful. It would be a pit to hide it. If you're willing, I'll definitely help you." Her encouragement made Camellia feel warm, but she was now an adult, confident she could handle everything well. Hearing that Camellia had graduated with top honors, Rosina congratulated her. Suddenly, an urgent knock interrupted their conversation. The butler reported urgent news from Del Casa. Marquis Vale had been captured by the enemy. What's more worrying was that Duke Ihar Claude had personally led a team to the enemy camp for rescue. With the two most important people in danger, Camellia was extremely anxious. Meanwhile, in the military camp, it took them 3 years to cut off the head of Aaron Sergio, and the captured captured enemy was being interrogated, but it wasn't a solution to wait for the interrogation results. Just then, Ian brought a good news, that he had found where Marquis Bale was being held, but he didn't want to share this information for free. After the war ended, he would probably never have another chance to get close to Camellia, so he couldn't miss this opportunity. Your Highness, please allow me to marry the only daughter of House Bale. If I can get your support, this international marriage would be ideal. Claude hadn't expected Ian to take advantage of the situation and immediately expressed opposition. Seeing this, Wade pretended not to know the true identity of Camellia, however. Marquis Bale only has 2 sons, but his lie was immediately seen through by Ian. You don't need to pretend not to know the truth, don't you already know? Camellia is actually a woman. I'm not forcing a marriage with her, I just hope that before I persuade the Marquis and win her affection, your can agree tome to show some sincerity. Seeing the situation turning unfavorable, Claude hurriedly tried to stop it, but his suggestion was ignored by Wade. Okay, I agree, but if you fail to rescue the Marquis, the agreement is automatically cancelled. Wade clearly understood what a dangerous situation Marquis Bale was in. Since Ian could help them rescue the Marquis, it was more prudent to follow his request for now. He persuaded Claude that they were doing this for Camelia's sake, and that their soldiers were tired too. Ian also added, Your Grace, don't be so selfish. You should think about the Marquis and Camelius. You wouldn't want to keep the future father-in-law of Heir Prince to wait too long in such a dangerous place. His words angered Claude, who punched Ian in the face. But Ian didn't get angry. He just smiled because he knew he had already gained the upper hand. On the other hand, Claude's face darkened. For Camelia's sake, I'll back down here, but you won't succeed easily, whether in winning her heart or anything else. Wade poured himself a drink, secretly thinking that getting punched was getting off lightly for Ian. The news quickly reached the capital. Anastasia cried breathlessly. Only after learning that Claude had personally gone to the rescue did her anxious heart slightly settle. She had also heard about Camellia graduating with top honors. It wasn't time for celebration because the Marquis had been captured, and Camellia also didn't plan to attend the graduation ceremony. Kieran also thought this was best, but Anastasia unexpectedly said she should attend the graduation ceremony. This is the first event held after the ceasefire declaration. We should attend to show the family's stability. The siblings were confused by her sudden change. The whole country knows about father's situation. If we attend the ceremony, wouldn't it attract too much attention? Anastasia explained, if Camellia attends alone, that would indeed happen, but if we go together, it's different. This behavior would show we're not panicking, maintaining proper dignity, and could also comfort those who have experienced similar hardships. Hearing that Lady Bale would attend her graduation ceremony, Camellia was overjoyed. However, because she was too immersed in this joy, she missed Anastasia's meaningful smile. Claude looked up and saw the lover he hadn't seen in 3 years. He was surprised about how Camellia had appeared in the palace. What worried him more was if someone saw her in that state. After all, she had always presented herself as a man. He hurried upstairs only to find she had already drunk quite a bit. It seemed today wasn't suitable for them to have a sincere conversation. Thinking carefully, he realized that Camellia had always been this careless, yet he hadn't noticed the flaws. How foolish he was. Camellia kept nuzzling against him like a little cat. He could only keep reminding himself to think of sad things to stay calm, but it didn't seem to help much. Suddenly, he pushed away the person in his arms. Camelius, no, Camellia, it is dangerous for you now because I've been holding back for 3 years. Hearing this, Camellia smiled brightly. Your Grace, me too. I've also missed you so much these years. As she finished speaking, she wrapped her arms around his neck like a koala, and then kissed him. In fact, the reason that Camellia had drunk so much was something had happened at the graduation ceremony. She had thought Lady Bale had accepted her, so she attended the graduation ceremony with high hopes. Seeing that her mother and brother hadn't arrived yet, she went to find the alumnus responsible for checking the attendance list to ask. However, he told her that they would not attend the graduation ceremony, and that Lady Bale had personally replied to the invitation. Camellia immediately faced criticism from her classmates. How disgusting, he just wants to show off, doesn't he? The Marquis has been captured, and he's still attending graduation ceremonies. It would be more appropriate for a child to spend time praying for his father. These words hit Camellia like a hammer to the heart. She should know that Lady Bale wouldn't do anything for her. She shouldn't have had expectations. But the Camellia now was no longer the girl who would only cry in the past. My father once taught me to maintain composure no matter the situation. Today is to celebrate graduation with classmates. I should attend on behalf of the Bale family. Congratulations on your graduation, Lord Torin. The composure that Camellia showed drew admiration from those present. Meanwhile, in Del Casa, Claude penetrated enemy lines and rescued Marquis Bale. Due to the sudden appearance of the enemy being stretched thin, he overlooked the danger behind him. A dark gun barrel was already aimed at him. At this critical moment, Ian acted quickly, helping him deal with the enemy behind. Now everything was over. Thanks to Marquis Bale, they had even recaptured the West. At this moment, Ian eagerly approached. Before you return to the Empire, we still have many things to discuss. I haven't heard your response to my proposal. Claude instantly darkened his face. He stepped forward and placed the other arm of Marquis on his shoulder. The Marquis needs treatment. We need to prepare for return. There probably isn't time for that. The two men exchanged words, neither showing any intention of backing down, which left Marquis Bale caught in the middle quite miserable. Rosina had also heard about what happened at the graduation ceremony. Lady Bale was really way too much, not even sparing you at the graduation ceremony. But you handled it well, don't worry too much about it. At that day's dinner, she got revenge for Camellia. Camelia's handled it very properly, and the news has even reached the Imperial Palace. A slight misstep would have harmed House Bale, so please take good care of Camellia, Lady Bale. I'm also concerned about the reputation of my intended's family. I hope you won't be upset hearing this. Anastasia immediately realized Rosina was putting pressure on her. Though reluctant, she could only reluctantly agree. Besides this, Rosina also gave Camellia a great gift, a beautiful room in the Imperial Palace. She did this to be able to see Camellia often. After all, during the war, she really would have had a hard time without Camellia. To fill her brother's absence, Rosina had been under enormous pressure, often unable to sleep due to delayed war reports. During those difficult days, only when she was with Camellia could she smile. She was really grateful for Camelia's companionship. That night, they accidentally drank too much. Camellia suddenly heard Claude's voice. Turning around, he had appeared before her. She couldn't help thinking, if this is a dream, I hope never to wake up. The next morning, Camellia woke up remembering she had a shameful dream last night. She dreamed that Claude came to find her and kissed her, but she bit his lip corner like a little wildcat. Claude joked that she was really a wildcat. His words kept echoing in her mind, making her feel quite embarrassed. On second thought, it was understandable that she would dream of Claude because he had appeared in her dreams many times. She thought it must be because she was too excited about seeing him in the parade. That's why she had such a dream. An hour later, the parade officially began. Camellia finally saw Claude, whom she had been thinking about. Only then did she realize the war was truly over. But soon she noticed something was off. Claude's lip corner was actually injured. Kieran told her that Claude and Wade had arrived last night, and only their father had come this morning. His words struck her. Realized that last night wasn't a dream. She wished she could find a hole to crawl into. But soon she discovered another more significant problem, which was that Claude already knew her secret that she was actually a woman. On the platform, the Emperor was delivering the speech. Claude Heir, I bestow upon you the Empire's utmost gratitude for leading the war to victory. Thank you for protecting my people, proud sons of Cayenne. This victory would not have been possible without your selfless sacrifice. Some have lost family, some have lost dreams, but what we have lost will definitely not be in vain. Never shall we forget that your selfless deeds have paved the way toward lasting peace. Thank you for coming back alive. The war ended, and the missed ones returned. Everyone was embraced by their families, except for Camellia. She was blocked by Anastasia, unable to receive her father's embrace. Just as she felt sad and at a loss, Claude appeared and embraced her. His gentle voice entered her heart, which made her heart not stop beating, and drowned out all other emotions. She had been lonely and sad in Bale, always alone, and even more fearful that Claude would discover the truth. But the moment he stood beside her, all these feelings completely disappeared. What was the most important was that Claude had returned alive, and they were reunited and embracing at this moment. As night fell, a celebration was held in the Imperial Palace. Camellia finally had the opportunity to embrace her father. She was grateful that her father had returned safely. Her father was also proud of her for graduating with top honors. But just as she was about to bring up matters related to leaving House Bale, Anastasia, sensing her intention, suddenly intervened, discreetly leading the Marquis away. Seeing there was no chance tonight, Camellia said goodbye to her brother and prepared to return to rest. But turning back, the scene she saw made her feel increasingly out of place. Unlike her loneliness, they all looked so happy. She had thought she had somewhat integrated with them before, but it seemed that it might have just been her illusion. At the moment she left, Claude precisely captured that hint of loneliness on her face, then followed her footsteps out. He suddenly appeared behind her, giving her a big surprise. May I invite you to dance, my lady? But his surprise turned to shock. The term "my lady" startled Camellia, who hurriedly explained that she was the second son of Bale. Seeing she didn't want to admit it, Claude smiled mischievously and mentioned last night. He had seen everything. Their intimate interaction was caught by two passing nobles. Camellia immediately widened her eyes in shock, extremely nervous inside. She pushed Claude away and fled. Her behavior made the passing nobles even more suspicious of their relationship. Claude quickly caught up with her. He was displeased because Camellia kept avoiding acknowledging her true identity, so he decided to punish her a little. After a kiss, he tightly held her hand, his eyes full of deep feelings. I don't want to play hide and seek with you anymore, Camellia. But Camellia still insisted on calling herself Camelius. Seeing she still wouldn't admit it, Claude picked her up. You can try to run again, but I won't let go. He gently placed Camellia on the bed and told her that there was no need to hide herself anymore by his side. Then he gently unbuttoned her front buttons. Revealed was her body tightly bound with strips of cloth. As the bandages were slowly unwrapped, the expression on his face froze when he saw the varying degrees of bruises on her body. His anger reached an unprecedented level. Then he left in a hurry. Kieran, who was leisurely strolling, didn't know danger was approaching. All along the way, Anastasia had been reprimanding Camellia for leaving without notice. Kieran, finally unable to tolerate it, rarely contradicted her. Wasn't it you who forced Camellia to leave the banquet? Anastasia looked back at her son in disbelief, but Kieran just handed her the umbrella, while he walked in the rain to find Rosina. The seed of hatred for Camellia began to sprout in Anastasia's heart. Camelius? Why is everyone so obsessed with that worthless child? How dare she provoke the relationship between I and Kieran? Shortly after Kieran left, he encountered the furious Claude. Claude not only ignored his greeting, but also knocked him to the ground with a punch. Kieran had just gotten up to question why he hit him, when Claude grabbed him by the collar. Have you seen her body? Have you seen those bruises on her? She tightly binds her body every day, disguising herself as a man. Bruises from concealing her identity cover her entire body. She has to endure that pain, living as a counterfeit, while you cowardly hide behind her. Why do you only pretend pretend to be oblivious. Kieran was left speechless by his questioning. The details of living with Camellia over the years surged like a tide, but he truly cared for her. To protect her, he had also tried hard. But Claude angrily said, "You shouldn't be protecting Camelius, but Camellia. You should be protecting not the false Camelius, but the real her." These words opened his sealed memories. The reason his sister had become Camelius was to seek his mother's forgiveness for her mother. But in fact, the person who had abandoned him by the frozen lakeside was his own birth mother, Anastasia. Camellia and her mother were both innocent. "Kieran, you'll abandon her again for your family and your mother this time, right? But she truly cherishes you more than anyone. Please tell your family that Camellia will return to Del Casa with me. I won't let her continue to suffer in house bail. From now on, I will protect her." Meanwhile, Camellia was crying in the bathtub. She believed Claude had left because he saw the bruises on her body. Thinking of this, she cried even more sorrowfully. Suddenly, Claude's shout came through. "What are you doing? Why are you showering in cold water?" Then he took off his shirt and put it on Camellia. "Your body is frozen like ice. What if you catch a cold?" Hearing his concerned words, Camellia finally couldn't hold back and burst into tears. The explanations at the tip of her tongue somehow couldn't be voiced. Finally, she tightly hugged his neck. After her emotions finally calmed, Claude worriedly asked, "Can you tell me why you did that?" She choked back her sobs. "It's too ugly. Everything about me, these bruises seem to prove I'm neither a man nor a woman. I wanted to wash away those bruises, so you wouldn't abandon me." Claude confused. "What are you saying? Why would I abandon you? Didn't you leave after seeing these bruises? Because I'm so ugly." Before she could finish, Claude pressed his forehead against hers. "Camellia, if I had known you would be like this, I would never have left you, and you are so pretty in my heart." After saying this, he lowered his head and kissed her lips. Hearing her ask why he had angrily left, Claude didn't know she would think this way. "Put your tiny head of yours to work. It seems that I've never been angry with you. Don't you really know?" Camellia instantly choked up. "I don't know. As you said, I'm stupid and foolish. If you don't tell me personally, I really don't know anything." Claude grabbed her hand, forced her to look at him, and touched her cheek. "I wasn't angry, I was worried about you." Seeing her so vulnerable, Claude felt heartache and madness. During the 3 years of resistance, he had only managed to hold on by recalling the scene of her softly saying she liked him. He had waited 3 years for this moment. How could he find her ugly? The next day, Claude woke up first, looking contentedly at Camellia beside him. How he wished her beauty could be seen only by himself. Deeply moved, he couldn't resist touching her cheek. "No matter how I look at her, she doesn't look like a man. How was I deceived for so long?" His self-doubt was heard by the just awakened Camellia. "My acting is good, isn't it, my Grace?" Claude immediately leaned forward, imperiously demanding Camellia call him by his name. Seeing her still hesitating, his hand unexpectedly reached under the covers. Camellia was immediately startled, her face turning red. Only when hearing her call out his name was he satisfied. As they were being affectionate, a series of hurried footsteps came closer. The next second, the door was opened. Wade burst in. Claude angrily threw a pillow at him and rose to shield Camellia behind him, full of dissatisfaction. He coldly told Wade to say whatever it was outside. It turned out Wade knew he was here, because Rosina had given this room to Camellia. He teasingly smiled that Claude had finally ended his long, unrequited love. "How should I tell Ian?" Claude impatiently said. "Stop joking, what's the matter?" Wade explained he had come to find Camellia. The Bale estate had been attacked, and the diamonds that Marquise Bale and Claude's father had brought back from the neutral zone were missing. But Lady Bale had accused Camellia of being a suspect, and claimed witnesses had identified Camellia near Louvre. Moreover, Camellia had been sending letters to Louvre, so she was suspected of colluding with criminals. But the fact was that Camellia had been with Claude last night. As long as Claude personally went to the police station to provide testimony, he could prove this matter had nothing to do with Camellia. But the problem was that everyone saw Camelius as a man. If Claude stepped forward, though the issue would be easily resolved, it would damage the reputation of both families. But Claude cared nothing about this. He wouldn't stand by and watch his beloved being falsely accused. Seeing them arguing increasingly fiercely, Camellia quickly spoke up to stop them. She believed Wade was right and Claude didn't need to take the risk. Since the witness was giving false testimony, they would certainly find flaws. She wanted to listen to the testimony first. This time she wanted to solve it herself. She told Claude he just needed to trust her. Claude had no choice but to compromise, on the condition that he would go with her. Meanwhile, House Vale was in chaos. Kieran strongly defended Camellia. "Mother, your guard must have seen the wrong person." Anastasia retorted, "There's a limit to your protection. She caused the butler to be severely injured. All testimonies point to her, and she's been secretly sending letters to Louvre behind our backs." Kieran's eyes instantly reddened. "Mother, do you really not know why he sends letters to the Louvre region?" The exasperated Marquise Bale spoke up to stop them. "Enough, Kieran. How can you be so disrespectful to your mother? Camelius is our child, that's beyond doubt. Even for the sake of the family, we should protect her." Anastasia shook off his hand. "Camelius transferred the imperial diamonds to Louvre. That's the empire's most troublesome place. She must have given them to her mother. She must be expelled from the family and severely punished." Seeing his mother gradually becoming frantic, Kieran finally voiced what he had held back for so long. Duke Heir won't stand idly by. He deeply cares for Camelius, and the person with Camelius last night was also him. Anastasia was thunderstruck about his words, but she remained obstinate. "Let's wait the investigation results." After speaking, she turned and left. The room was left with only Marquise Bale and Kieran. The Marquise tried to appease his son, tried to understand your mother. She views Camelius as her own, but Camelius has always been searching for his birth mother. That's why she's like this. We need to clear up your mother's misunderstanding first. Kieran was utterly speechless. "Father, a long time ago, I was found by the lake. The person who abandoned me by the lake that day was not Camelia's mother, but my mother." But hearing this explosive news, Marquise Vale didn't seem very surprised surprised. Meanwhile, Camelius had just returned home and received an anonymous package, a vase full of jasmine flowers, which reminded her of the note the doctor had given. On the day when the scent of jasmine fills the air, come to the boutique, 46 Brill Street. If you come at the time written on the note, you can meet Laura. Noticing the maid struggled to lift the vase, Claude became alert to something off. He took the vase and smashed it on the ground, revealing a large number of diamonds inside. They realized someone was trying to frame Camelia as the mastermind behind this incident. Camelia sternly said, "These diamonds are imperial property. Everyone pick them up and keep them safe. Not a single one can be lost." They learned from the maid that someone had deliberately placed this vase at the front of the mansion. They guessed that whoever placed something so valuable wouldn't have left immediately. He must be nearby watching. Claude suggested letting his men search, but Camelia wasn't sure if her mother was connected to those terrorists. She feared if Claude got involved in the investigation, her mother might be in danger. So she declined his kind offer. "Didn't you say you'd only help me when I needed it? You seem to really need help now." "No, you don't need to help me. Your Grace, please go back first." Her sudden distancing puzzled Claude. He didn't understand why she had to refuse his help. Facing his lover, who resolutely turned away, his heart felt like it was being tightly squeezed. When Camelia arrived at the clothing store alone, Sharon was already waiting inside. Sharon led her to an inconspicuous corner of the store, where there was a hidden compartment. The doctor knew she would definitely come. After she entered, the compartment was closed. Camelia constantly reminded herself to stay calm, to naturally probe their background, but she didn't expect the hidden compartment to have another world within. Behind the bookshelf was actually a passage leading directly to their headquarters, and her mother was there. She didn't know if what he said was true, but now besides believing him, she had no other choice. She asked the doctor if he had placed something else in the vase. He admitted straightforwardly, "You've already discovered it. No wonder you seem so tense." Camelia continued to question whether the armed robbers who attacked Housevale were really them. "We had our difficulties too. Haven't you ever felt wronged? They monopolize all resources just because they're aristocrats. Just because they're nobles, they can steal someone else's mother and gender, even depriving us of our freedom. Don't you understand? Once they've used you, they'll completely discard you." Along the way, he kept inciting Camelia to rebel, but she didn't respond and just silently followed him. Finally, they reached the destination. She would soon see her mother. With an anxious heart, she slowly walked forward. The scene before her instantly brought tears to her eyes. She had really seen her longed-for mother. Her mother was still so beautiful, just as she remembered. The doctor stepped forward to explain. "Laura's legs aren't good. After losing you, she frantically searched all over Louvre. On that rainy night, who knows how many times she fell. Suddenly, footsteps approached. She thought it was you, but unexpectedly, she was attacked by a stranger. Her feet were severely injured from that day. But she still didn't give up finding you. She dragged her painful feet to Corsair, but not only did she not see you, she nearly lost her life. She went to find you a few more times until her feet completely couldn't walk anymore, but each time was in vain." Knowing everything, Camelia felt deeply sorrowful. She didn't know her mother had suffered so much to find her. The doctor continued, "But doesn't she look happy now? Although their food and clothing are incomparably humble compared to yours, they are much happier than you. Because at least Laura hasn't been betrayed. Haven't you noticed? The one who framed you as the thief is the one you've always called Mother, Anastasia." Camelia showed disbelief. The doctor continued to reveal the truth. "There was never any debt of nurturing. Anastasia has been thinking of destroying you. Of course, there must be other nobles helping you, but how long can they help you? Once you've lost your value, they'll immediately abandon you. But here, no one will care about your origin. You can live happily with Laura again, just like before. If you could bring some of the property of Housevale, it could solve our poverty problem. Laura would be happier than now." His words had enormous appeal. Camelia didn't reject on the spot. She promised that next time they met, she would give him an answer. However, what she didn't know was that it was all the doctor's scheme. This wasn't their headquarters, but a place where Laura had been engaged in public education. The man beside her was just her colleague. Entering that dark passage, Camelia couldn't feel happy at all. The first thing she thought of was her mother's radiant smile. Although she had always dreamed of living happily with her mother again, but even without her mother now seemed happy. She worried that if she suddenly appeared, it might shatter the smile her mother had found with such difficulty. With things having come to this, she couldn't continue staying with Housevale. If they knew she was from Louvre, they probably wouldn't treat her the same way anymore. But she also couldn't collaborate with terrorists because of this. Just as she was sinking into despair, Claude appeared. "Camelia, come out quickly." The moment Claude tightly held her, she broke free from the abyss of despair. He held her tightly in his arms like a treasured possession lost and found. "Close your eyes, Camelia. There's something outside you can't bear. Don't open your eyes until I tell you to. Just listen to me." He asked why she had risked danger alone. Though he had never really been angry with Ian before, he was truly angry this time. Camelia hurriedly apologized. Seeing she had returned safe and sound, Claude couldn't bear to be angry. At this moment, he was just thankful she was really all right. Through the glass of the car window, Camelia saw a bloody scene. It was Sharon, the clothing store owner. Claude seriously said to her, "If this continues, you'll truly be considered as colluding with Louvre, and it is also providing evidence to Lady Bale, who is eager to destroy you." Camelia looked up with a complex gaze. "What if I am really colluding with Louvre? How are you so sure I'm not the mastermind behind this incident? I might really be connected with them." Claude firmly replied, "I know you. We've been known for many years. You're not that kind of person. I've known for a long time that you're from Louvre. For me, it's not a problem at all, so you don't need to worry. From now on, let me help you solve this together." So this is how it feels to be firmly trusted by someone. Camelia was instantly moved to tears. She frankly told everything she knew. "The terrorists from Louvre want to get funds from me. They want me to bring wealth and join them. My mother, no, No, Lady Bale wants to destroy me at any cost. She's working with the people from Louvre. A child born in Louvre sending diamonds to Louvre? People who don't know the truth would surely believe this. Even if we can prove I was with you last night, it's still difficult to clear the suspicion of my connection with Louvre. Claude told her not to worry, because he would take this opportunity to make Louvre disappear completely, cutting off the connection between it and Camellia. Camellia felt worried about his words. What about her mother? Claude keenly sensed there seemed to be some connection, so he continued. I'll watch how it's handled. This incident will temporarily end with Sharon being executed on the spot. Next, I'll inquire about your mother's situation and start a formal investigation. It undoubtedly reassured Camellia. She was very grateful to Claude and expressed she would help with anything. After confirming she would agree to anything, Claude instantly had an idea that he wanted to invite her to live with him, thus he could protect her. Camellia cheerfully agreed.